I shouldn't be touching you like this. Those 6 words would destroy everything Daniel Cross had carefully rebuilt, or save him from a life half-lived. Standing in that corporate hallway, a widowed father of 6 years, he'd come for stability, for predictable paychecks and evenings with his daughter. Instead, the CEO's fingers lingered on his collar, straightening a tie that didn't need straightening, her breath warm against his jaw. One moment, one choice, one woman who could either become his biggest mistake or his second chance at happiness. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Hale Industries' executive floor hummed with the kind of sterile efficiency that Daniel Cross had come to associate with modern corporate America. It was 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in early September, and he was 13 minutes early for the interview that would either resurrect his career or confirm what he'd begun to suspect over the past 6 months, that he'd become unemployable, a 34-year-old software architect whose resume had more gaps than credentials, whose reference calls went unreturned, whose LinkedIn profile attracted nothing but automated rejection emails and predatory MLM schemes. He stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle, watching the morning commute crawl along Interstate 5 like blood through congested arteries. His reflection stared back at him, dark hair showing premature gray at the temples. Shoulders that had once been broader before grief and single parenthood had worn him down to essential elements. A charcoal suit he'd purchased 7 years ago for his wedding and had last worn to his wife's funeral. The suit still fit, barely, though it hung differently now on a frame that had lost 15 pounds and never quite found them again. The tie was crooked. He'd noticed it in the elevator, but had convinced himself it looked fine, that obsessing over perfect grooming was just anxiety manifesting as control issues, that any interviewer worth their salary would care more about his GitHub contributions than his ability to tie a Windsor knot. But now, with 3 minutes until his appointment and his reflection mocking him from the glass, the asymmetry felt like a neon sign broadcasting his incompetence. "You're early." The voice came from behind him, low, measured, carrying the kind of natural authority that didn't need volume to command attention. Daniel turned too quickly, nearly losing his balance, and found himself facing a woman who absolutely could not be who his anxiety-soaked brain was suggesting she might be. Victoria Hale wore a dove-gray suit tailored with the precision of someone who understood that clothing was armor, that presentation was half the battle in a world that made assumptions before you opened your mouth. Her dark hair was pulled back in a style that was professional without being severe, revealing a face that might have been called handsome rather than beautiful. Strong jaw, intelligent eyes the color of smoke, the kind of face that looked like it had stories to tell, and the discretion to keep most of them. She was also, according to the company website Daniel had memorized the night before, the founder and CEO of Hale Industries, a woman who'd built a mid-sized tech consulting firm from nothing, who'd been profiled in Forbes and TechCrunch, who had approximately 10,000 better things to do on a Tuesday morning than personally greet a candidate for a senior developer position. "Ms. Hale," Daniel managed, extending his hand with what he hoped looked like confidence rather than desperation. "I'm Daniel Cross. I have a 9 o'clock with me," she interrupted, her handshake firm and brief. "HR scheduled you with Tom Chen from engineering, but Tom's daughter has strep throat, so I'm stepping in." Her eyes moved over him with the systematic evaluation of someone who'd conducted 1,000 interviews, cataloging data points, forming preliminary conclusions. Then her gaze stopped at his collar and something shifted in her expression. Not quite amusement, not quite sympathy, but something in that spectrum. "Your tie," she said. "I know," Daniel replied, reaching up to adjust it. "I noticed in the elevator, but I thought—" "It's not terrible," Victoria said, taking a step closer. "But it's not right either, and interview psychology is a cruel science. We'd like to think we evaluate candidates on merit, but the brain makes 1,000 micro-judgments in the first 30 seconds. Another step. She was close enough now that he could smell her perfume, something subtle with notes of cedar and bergamot. "May I?" The question hung between them, professional and yet somehow intimate, asking permission for a gesture that would require her to enter his personal space, to touch him, however briefly and innocently. Daniel's throat had gone dry. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Victoria reached up, her fingers brushing against his collar as she loosened the tie and began working it into proper alignment. She was perhaps 3 inches shorter than his 6 feet, which meant she had to tilt her head back slightly to see what she was doing, which meant Daniel found himself looking down at her face from an angle that felt uncomfortably close to romantic, his heart rate accelerating in a way that had nothing to do with interview anxiety. "Hold still," she murmured, adjusting the knot with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd tied many ties in her life. Her fingers worked quickly, professionally, and yet there was something about the gesture, the care of it, the intimacy of standing this close to a stranger, the smell of her perfume mixing with his own nervous sweat, that made the moment feel suspended in amber, stretched beyond its actual duration. Time did something strange. The fluorescent light seemed to brighten. The ambient noise of the office, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the espresso machine hissing in the break room, faded to a low hum. Daniel became acutely aware of his own breathing, of the way Victoria's fingers brushed against his throat as she tightened the knot, of the small furrow of concentration between her eyebrows. "There," she said, smoothing down his collar with a final, lingering touch. She stepped back, her professional mask sliding back into place, but her eyes held his for a moment longer than strictly necessary. "Much better." "Thank you," Daniel said, his voice coming out rougher than intended. Victoria's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Word of advice, Mr. Cross?" She moved toward the conference room, expecting him to follow. "If you work here, if you join my company, there are going to be moments when someone, probably me, is going to stand very close to you. Project deadlines at midnight, crisis management, team celebrations where personal space becomes negotiable." She paused at the conference room door, turning to face him with an expression that was equal parts professional distance and something harder to define. "And if your heart rate spikes every time someone adjusts your tie, this environment might eat you alive." It was a warning. It was also, Daniel realized with a jolt of recognition that felt like touching a live wire, a test. "Ms. Hale," he said, meeting her eyes with more steadiness than he felt, "my heart rate spiked because I'm interviewing for a job I desperately need, at a company I've researched obsessively, with a CEO who's personally conducting said interview instead of delegating to HR. The tie thing was just good timing." The lie was obvious to both of them. Victoria's expression shifted again, definite amusement this time, threaded through with something that might have been approval. "Good answer," she said, opening the conference room door. "Let's see if the rest of your interview is as convincing." Yet, the next 90 minutes were simultaneously the most grueling and exhilarating professional experience of Daniel's life. Victoria Hale interviewed the way a chess master played speed rounds, quickly, ruthlessly, with a comprehensive understanding of both the game and her opponent's weaknesses. She moved through his resume with surgical precision, asking questions that exposed every gap, every ambiguity, every optimistic exaggeration. "You worked at Meridian Systems for 4 years," she said, tapping her tablet where his work history was displayed. "Senior architect leading a team of 6. Excellent reviews, projects delivered on time and under budget." She looked up. Then nothing for 6 months. Then a part-time contract position at a startup that folded 3 months later. Then nothing again for a year. Then freelance work. She set down the tablet. "Tell me about the gaps." This was the moment Daniel had been dreading, the question he'd rehearsed a dozen different answers for, none of them feeling adequate. He could lie. Personal health issues, family obligations, sabbatical for professional development, or he could tell the truth and risk the sympathy interview, the "we'll keep your resume on file" dismissal that meant thanks, but we need someone without baggage. "My wife died," he said simply. "Car accident. I took time off to take care of our daughter, to figure out how to be a single parent, to keep us both from falling apart. The contract position was supposed to be a soft return to work, but the company had funding issues unrelated to my performance. The freelance work was what I could manage while still being present for a 6-year-old who'd lost her mother." Victoria's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes softened. "How old is your daughter now?" 8, Lily. She's in 3rd grade. "And you're ready to return to full-time work?" "I need to return to full-time work," Daniel corrected. Freelancing doesn't provide stability or benefits or a predictable schedule. Lily needs routine. She needs to know that when I say I'll be home for dinner, I'll be home for dinner. She needs to see me building something instead of just surviving. Victoria nodded slowly, making a note on her tablet. The position we're hiring for is senior developer on our healthcare systems team. Project deadlines can be intense, but we maintain strict work-life boundaries. 45 hours per week maximum, flexible scheduling, full remote options for parents managing school schedules. No weekend work except in genuine emergencies. And emergencies are rare because we plan properly. She looked up. But I need to know you can handle the technical requirements. Your resume is solid, but dated. The industry moves fast. What have you been learning during your time away? And just like that, they were back on safe ground. Technical questions, coding philosophy, system architecture, the kind of problems that had clear solutions and didn't require him to expose the raw wound of his grief. Daniel relaxed into the rhythm of it, explaining his approach to scalable database design, discussing his opinions on microservices versus monoliths, sketching out a solution to a hypothetical integration problem on the whiteboard. He lost track of time. The conversation shifted from interview to collaboration, from one-sided interrogation to genuine exchange of ideas. Victoria challenged his assumptions, proposed alternative approaches, tested the boundaries of his knowledge with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely loved solving problems. Daniel found himself enjoying it, the intellectual sparring, the sense of being taken seriously by someone who clearly knew her field. Okay, Victoria said finally, glancing at her watch. We're 20 minutes over, and I have a board call in 10. She stood, gathering her materials. I'm going to be direct, Mr. Cross. Your technical skills are excellent. Your approach to problem solving is sound. Your references, the ones I could reach, speak highly of your work ethic and reliability. She paused. But I'm concerned about the gaps, not because they reflect poorly on your abilities, but because I need to know you're committed, that you won't take this position, get 3 months in, and realize that work-life balance is still too much while you're managing single parenthood. It was a fair concern. Daniel couldn't argue with the logic. What would convince you? Honesty, Victoria said. Tell me what you need to make this work. Not what you think I want to hear. What you actually need. Daniel took a breath. I need to leave by 5:30 every day to pick up Lily from after-school care. I need to know that if she gets sick, I can work from home without it being held against me. I need health insurance that covers pediatric therapy because my daughter still has nightmares about the accident. I need... He stopped, aware that he was listing demands rather than selling himself. I need a manager who understands that I'm good at my job precisely because I have someone depending on me to be good at it. That the structure and discipline of being a parent makes me better at managing complex projects, not worse. Victoria studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she extended her hand. You'll hear from us by end of week. The handshake was professional, brief, and yet Daniel felt the same electric charge he'd experienced when she'd fixed his tie, a sense of connection that went beyond the transactional nature of their interaction. Thank you for your time, he said. Thank you for your honesty, Victoria replied. She walked him to the elevator, maintaining the appropriate professional distance. But as the doors began to close, she spoke again. Mr. Cross? The tie thing wasn't just good timing. The doors closed before he could respond, leaving him alone in the descending elevator with his racing heart and the echo of her words. Daniel's apartment was a 15-minute bus ride from downtown, a one-bedroom unit in a complex that catered to young professionals and families who couldn't quite afford Seattle's skyrocketing rents, but refused to commit to the suburban sprawl. He'd converted the bedroom into Lily's space and made do with a pull-out couch in the living room, the arrangement that his mother-in-law called unsustainable and his therapist called transitional. Both were right in their way, but rent was $1,400 a month, utilities included, and the elementary school was 3 blocks away, and sometimes sustainability mattered less than survival. He picked up Lily at 3:15 from Roosevelt Elementary's aftercare program, where she was the queen of the Lego table, building elaborate structures that the other kids would immediately destroy, sending her into fits of righteous indignation that the staff had learned to navigate with practiced patience. Daddy! She crashed into his legs with the full-body enthusiasm of an 8-year-old who hadn't yet learned to moderate her affection. Marcus broke my castle again. "Did you use your words like we talked about?" Daniel asked, crouching down to her level. Lily had inherited her mother's dark curls and his gray eyes, a combination that made strangers stop them on the street to comment on how beautiful she'd be when she grew up, as if beauty was the highest achievement an 8-year-old girl could aspire to. "I told him that destruction of property is a crime," Lily said seriously, "and that he should consider the consequences of his actions." Daniel bit back a smile. "That's very articulate. What did Marcus say?" "He said I was being bossy. Then Ms. Jennifer made us both apologize." "And did you?" Lily scowled. "I said I was sorry for using big words, but I wasn't sorry for being right." "That's my girl," Daniel said, taking her hand as they walked toward the bus stop. "How was the rest of your day?" The walk home was filled with Lily's running commentary on third-grade politics. Who was friends with whom, which teacher was nice versus which teacher was strict but fair, the ongoing drama of the lunch table seating arrangements. Daniel listened with half his attention, the other half still replaying the morning's interview, Victoria's fingers on his collar, the warmth in her voice when she'd said the tie thing wasn't just good timing. He was being ridiculous. She was the CEO. He was a candidate. The momentary spark was probably just his touch-starved brain misinterpreting professional courtesy as attraction. He hadn't been on a date since Sarah died, hadn't felt even a flicker of interest in another woman, had convinced himself that part of his life was simply over, that he'd used up his allocation of romance, and what remained was the practical business of raising his daughter and paying bills. And yet, "Daddy, you're not listening," Lily accused as they climbed the stairs to their apartment. "I am listening," Daniel protested. "You were talking about lunch tables." "That was 5 minutes ago. Now I'm talking about the science fair." Lily dumped her backpack on the floor and headed for the refrigerator with the single-minded determination of someone who'd been promised a snack. "It's in 3 weeks, and I need to start my project." Daniel pulled out carrots and hummus, the approved after-school snack that Lily would eat without complaint because he'd gotten her invested in the idea of brain food. "What kind of project?" "Something about physics or chemistry or biology." Lily crunched a carrot thoughtfully. "Ms. Chen said we should ask ourselves questions about the world and then use science to find answers." "That's a good approach. What questions do you have?" Lily was quiet for a moment, and Daniel recognized the expression. The same intense concentration Sarah used to get when she was working through a problem, chewing her bottom lip, eyes slightly unfocused. "Why do some people die and other people don't?" The question hit like a fist to his solar plexus. Daniel set down the carrot he'd been eating, buying himself a moment to formulate a response that wouldn't completely shatter either of them. "That's a big question, baby. I'm not sure science has a complete answer." "But there must be reasons," Lily insisted, with the 8-year-old's conviction that the world made sense if you just asked enough questions. Like, was Mom's car not safe? Or was the other driver not paying attention? Or was it just bad luck? Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Because if it was bad luck, then bad luck could happen to you too. And then I'd be alone. Daniel pulled her into his lap, holding her tight, feeling her small body shake with the fear she'd been carrying alone. "Listen to me, Lily. I'm not going anywhere. I wear my seatbelt every time. I don't drive distracted. I'm careful." "Mom was careful too," Lily whispered into his shirt. "I know." Daniel kissed the top of her head, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "I know, baby. And you're right that we can't control everything, but we can control what we do, how we prepare, how we take care of ourselves and each other." He pulled back enough to see her face. "How about this? Instead of asking why people die, what if you asked what keeps people safe? You could test different safety equipment, or research how engineers design cars to protect people, or—" "I could build a better seatbelt," Lily said, her tears already drying, her mind pivoting toward the concrete problem. "One that's specifically designed for kids." "That's a great idea. And then I could send it to car companies, and they could use it, and then fewer kids would get hurt." She was fully invested now, already sketching diagrams in her mind. I'll need supplies and research materials. Can we go to the library? This weekend, Daniel promised. Right now, you have homework. Lily groaned with the theatrical despair of a student facing 30 minutes of math worksheets, but she gathered her materials and settled at the kitchen table with minimal protest. Daniel started dinner, chicken breast, roasted vegetables, rice, while monitoring her progress and trying not to obsess over whether his phone would ring with good news or bad. It didn't ring that evening, or the next day. By Thursday, Daniel had convinced himself that the interview had gone worse than he'd thought, that Victoria's parting comment had been professional courtesy rather than genuine interest, that he should start applying to other positions before his savings ran completely dry. The call came Friday afternoon while he was helping Lily with her spelling words. "Mr. Cross, this is Victoria Hale." Daniel's heart stopped. He muted the TV where Lily was half watching a nature documentary and moved into the kitchen, his hand shaking slightly as he pressed the phone to his ear. "Ms. Hale, thank you for calling. I wanted to reach out personally rather than having HR send a form letter." There was a pause, and Daniel braced himself for the gentle rejection. "We'd like to offer you the position. Senior Developer, Healthcare Systems Team, starting salary of $95,000 with full benefits. 45-hour weeks maximum, flexible scheduling as discussed. 2 weeks paid vacation to start, increasing to 3 weeks after your first year." Daniel's knees went weak. He grabbed the counter for support. Yes, I accept, thank you." "Excellent." Victoria's voice carried a warmth that seemed to reach through the phone. "HR will send over the formal offer letter and onboarding materials. Your start date is October 1st, which gives you 2 weeks to get your affairs in order. Welcome to Hale Industries, Daniel." "Thank you, Ms. Hale. I won't let you down." "I know," she said simply. "And Daniel? It's Victoria. At least when we're not in formal meetings." The line went dead before he could process the implications of that informality, leaving him standing in his kitchen with a job offer and the distinct impression that his carefully controlled life was about to become significantly more complicated. "Daddy," Lily appeared in the doorway, her spelling words forgotten. "Why are you smiling like that?" Daniel scooped her up, spinning her around despite her protests that she was too old for such things. "Because I got the job, baby, which means steady paychecks and health insurance, and I can be home for dinner every night." "Will we have to move?" Lily asked, always pragmatic. "Not right away, but maybe eventually we can get a 2-bedroom place. You could have your own room, and I could have mine." "And you could have space for dates," Lily said, with the kind of directness that 8-year-olds wielded like weapons. Daniel set her down, genuinely surprised. "What?" "Ms. Jennifer says her daddy started dating again after her mom left, and now she has a stepmom who's actually really nice and takes her to get her nails done." Lily examined her own nails critically. "I think you should date. You're lonely." "I'm not lonely," Daniel protested. "I have you." "That's different." Lily returned to the couch, to her spelling words and her nature documentary, leaving Daniel standing in the kitchen with the uncomfortable realization that his 8-year-old daughter had just given him permission to move on with his life. The question was whether he was brave enough to take it. October 1st arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made Seattle bearable, the sky clear for once, the air sharp with the promise of changing seasons. Daniel dropped Lily at school with extra hugs and reassurances that, yes, he'd be there at pickup. No, nothing would change except he'd be happier and less stressed. Then he boarded the bus downtown, wearing the same charcoal suit and a different tie, one he'd practiced knotting until it was perfect. Hale Industries occupied 3 floors of a modern building with the kind of open-concept workspace that was supposed to promote collaboration, but mostly just meant everyone could hear everyone else's phone conversations. Daniel's team was on the 7th floor, a cluster of developers working on healthcare integration systems, HIPAA compliance, electronic health records. His manager was a woman named Patricia Rodriguez, mid-40s, with the patient demeanor of someone who'd survived multiple tech bubbles and no longer got excited about ping-pong tables in the break room. "You'll be working primarily with our hospital system clients," Patricia explained, walking him through the floor plan. "We handle everything from initial implementation to ongoing support. Your background in scalable architecture is exactly what we need. Most of our clients are growing faster than their systems can handle. She paused outside a conference room where a meeting was in progress. Victoria likes to check in on new hires around lunchtime. Don't be nervous. She's intense, but fair. Daniel nodded, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. The morning passed in the usual onboarding blur. HR paperwork, IT setup, system access, introduction to team members whose names he'd forget by lunch. His desk was by a window which felt like a luxury after years of freelancing from his couch. He had a company laptop, dual monitors, a drawer for personal items that was currently empty except for a photo of Lily. At 12:30, Victoria appeared. She moved through the office with the purposeful efficiency of someone whose time was measured in 6-minute increments, stopping at desks to ask questions, review work, offer suggestions. When she reached Daniel's station, she was trailed by an assistant with a tablet and an harried expression. "Daniel," Victoria said, her smile professional but genuine, "how's your first morning?" "Good, great. Everyone's been very welcoming." He was acutely aware of his team watching this interaction, cataloging data points, forming theories about why the CEO was personally greeting the new hire. "Patricia taking good care of you?" "Absolutely." Victoria nodded, already mentally moving to her next task. "Excellent. I'll want to sit down with you in a few weeks once you're settled, get your initial impressions of our systems and processes. Fresh eyes often catch things we've stopped seeing." She turned to leave, then paused. "And Daniel? Your tie is perfect today." She was gone before he could respond, leaving behind the faint scent of cedar and bergamot, an office full of curious stares. "Well," said Marcus Chen, the developer at the next desk, grinning widely, "that was interesting." "What was interesting?" Daniel asked, feigning ignorance. "The CEO doesn't usually comment on people's ties, or personally welcome new hires, or," Marcus leaned in conspiratorially, "smile like that. Which suggests either you made an impression during your interview, or she's planning to use you as a test case for her new management philosophy." "I'm sure it's the latter," Daniel said firmly, turning back to his screens with a focus that discouraged further speculation. But for the rest of the day, he found himself hyper-aware of Victoria's presence in the building. The sound of her voice in the hallway, the click of her heels on the polished floor, the way the office energy seemed to shift when she was near. He told himself it was normal, that everyone was probably attuned to the CEO's movements, that he wasn't special in his awareness. He almost believed it. The first weeks at Hale Industries fell into a rhythm that felt almost sustainable. Daniel worked 8:30 to 5, leaving with enough buffer to catch the bus and collect Lily by 5:30. His team was competent and collaborative, the work challenging but manageable, the culture exactly what Victoria had promised. Professional excellence balanced with human decency. No one questioned when he left on time. No one sent emails at midnight expecting immediate responses. No one made him feel guilty for having a life outside the office. Victoria maintained a careful distance. She was friendly but formal in meetings, offering feedback that was direct without being harsh, asking questions that revealed she'd actually read his reports rather than just skimming the executive summary. She remembered details, that Lily was in 3rd grade, that Daniel took the bus rather than driving, that he preferred his coffee black. But she shared those observations in group settings where they felt appropriately professional rather than inappropriately personal. And yet there were moments, small things, glances that lasted a half-second too long, the way she laughed at his jokes with what seemed like genuine delight rather than polite courtesy. The time she brought him coffee during a late afternoon deadline, setting it on his desk with a comment about him looking tired, her hand brushing his shoulder as she walked away. Maybe he was imagining it. Maybe it was wishful thinking. Maybe he was so starved for adult connection that he was manufacturing attraction where none existed. Or maybe, Daniel thought, as he watched Victoria lead a presentation on Q4 projections with the kind of controlled passion that made even budget forecasts seem exciting, maybe he was in serious trouble. The realization didn't hit all at once. It accumulated in moments, in observations, in the slow dawning awareness that he was thinking about her too much, noticing things that shouldn't matter, the way she twisted her pen when she was thinking, the small scar on her left hand, the fact that she stayed late most nights, her office light visible from the street when he passed on his way to the bus. By the end of his first month, Daniel had accepted 3 truths. He was good at his job, his daughter was thriving with the new stability, and he was developing feelings for his boss that were completely inappropriate and absolutely undeniable. The question was what, if anything, he was going to do about it. The company Halloween party provided the answer, though not in any way Daniel could have anticipated. Hale Industries threw an annual celebration that was technically optional but functionally mandatory, held in the building's event space with costumes encouraged but not required. Daniel had debated skipping it, but Patricia had made it clear that team bonding events were part of the culture. And besides, Lily had been excited about helping him choose a costume. They'd settled on a simple mad scientist aesthetic that required only a lab coat and strategic hair product. The party was already in full swing when Daniel arrived at 7, having dropped Lily with his mother-in-law for a sleepover. The space had been transformed with orange lights and fake cobwebs, a DJ playing music that was slightly too loud, clusters of employees and varying degrees of costume commitment. Daniel grabbed a beer and found his team near the food table, where Marcus was holding forth on the superiority of candy corn while their colleague Jennifer argued passionately for peanut butter cups. "Cross, you came!" Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "We were betting on whether you'd show. Jennifer said you seemed too serious for office parties." "I'm full of surprises," Daniel said mildly, scanning the room with what he told himself was casual interest rather than searching for anyone in particular. He found her by the windows, talking with the CFO and someone from legal. Victoria had eschewed traditional costumes in favor of a black suit with subtle skeletal details, bones traced in silver thread along the sleeves and lapels, elegant and understated and somehow more striking than the elaborate get-ups around her. She looked up as if sensing his gaze, and their eyes met across the crowded room with the kind of timing that felt scripted, cinematic, impossible. She excused herself from her conversation and headed toward him with deliberate purpose. "Daniel," she said when she reached him, her voice pitched low enough that only he could hear over the music. "You came as a mad scientist. That's refreshingly literal." "I had a very enthusiastic costume consultant," he replied. "My daughter takes Halloween seriously." "She sounds wise." Victoria accepted a glass of wine from a passing server. "Are you enjoying yourself?" "It's loud," Daniel admitted. "But yes, it's nice to see everyone outside of work mode." "It is, isn't it?" Victoria's gaze drifted around the room, cataloging her employees, assessing the social dynamics. "I always worry these events feel obligatory rather than fun, but HR assures me people actually enjoy them." "You don't enjoy them?" She looked surprised by the question. "I'm working," she said simply. "Even when I'm socializing, I'm working, observing, making mental notes about who works well together, who might need a different role, who seems happy versus who's updating their resume." She took a sip of wine. "It's exhausting, honestly, but necessary." "You could just not work," Daniel suggested. "Just for one evening. Just be a person at a party." Victoria's laugh was short and slightly bitter. "I've built this company from nothing. 73 employees depending on me to make smart decisions. I don't get to just be a person." "Everyone gets to be a person," Daniel said quietly. "Even CEOs." They stood together in the midst of the noise and chaos, and something shifted between them, the professional distance collapsing, replaced by something more fragile and honest. Victoria looked at him like she was really seeing him for the first time, not as an employee or asset, but as someone who'd spoken a truth she'd been avoiding. "Dance with me," she said abruptly. "What?" "It's a party. People dance at parties." "And Victoria set down her wine glass. "I would like to not work for the next 3 minutes. Will you help me with that?" It was a terrible idea. They were employer and employee. Everyone was watching. The HR implications alone were enough to trigger an entire seminar on workplace boundaries. Daniel set down his beer and offered his hand. 3 minutes. The DJ had shifted to slower music, whether by coincidence or careful programming. Victoria stepped into Daniel's space, her hand finding his shoulder, his hand settling at her waist with the careful pressure of someone acutely aware of every point of contact. They moved together with the awkward formality of people who didn't quite trust themselves to get closer, maintaining a respectful distance that their bodies wanted to collapse. "This is inappropriate," Victoria said after a moment. "Completely," Daniel agreed. "I'm your boss." "You are." "And you work for me." "I do. So we should probably stop." "Probably." But neither of them stopped. They kept moving, swaying really, barely dancing, just existing together in a bubble of suspended judgment. Victoria's perfume was stronger this close, cedar and bergamot and something underneath that might have been her shampoo or body lotion, or just her. Daniel was intensely aware of his own heartbeat, of the warmth of her hand in his, of the way she was looking at him like he was a problem she couldn't quite solve. "I shouldn't be touching you like this," Victoria said, so quietly he almost didn't hear it over the music. And there it was, the echo of her words from that first morning, coming full circle, charged with completely different meaning. Daniel's grip on her waist tightened involuntarily. "You're not," he managed. "We're dancing. It's what people do at parties. We both know this isn't just dancing." "No," Daniel admitted. "It's not." The song ended. The spell broke. Victoria stepped back with visible effort, her professional mask sliding into place like armor. "Thank you for the dance, Daniel. I have people to talk to. Networking. You understand." "Of course," he said, though they both knew she was fleeing. He watched her disappear into the crowd, watched her laugh at someone's joke, watched her rebuild the walls he'd briefly glimpsed behind. And Daniel stood there in his mad scientist costume, with his heart hammering and the absolute certainty that he'd just crossed a line they couldn't uncross. 3 minutes had changed everything. And somehow, impossibly, he thought Victoria knew it too. The Monday after the Halloween party arrived with the gray weight of Seattle autumn, rain streaking the bus windows as Daniel made his morning commute. He'd spent the weekend in a state of carefully managed avoidance, throwing himself into Lily's science fair preparations with an intensity that made her ask if he was okay. He'd assured her he was fine, just excited about her project, and tried not to think about the way Victoria's hand had felt in his, the quiet desperation in her voice when she'd said, "I shouldn't be touching you like this." The office felt different now, charged with an awareness he couldn't shake. Daniel kept his head down, focused on his work with laser precision, arriving exactly at 8:30 and leaving exactly at 5, avoiding the break room during times when Victoria typically made her rounds. It was sustainable for approximately 3 days. On Thursday afternoon, his desk phone rang with an internal extension he recognized immediately. "Daniel, it's Victoria. Do you have a moment to come to my office?" His stomach dropped. "Of course. I'll be right there." The executive suite occupied the top floor, a space Daniel had only visited during his initial interview. Victoria's office was corner-positioned with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, decorated with the kind of understated elegance that suggested a professional designer rather than personal taste. She stood by the windows when he entered, her back to him, shoulders tense. "Close the door," she said without turning around. Daniel obeyed, his heart rate spiking. "Is there a problem with my work?" "Your work is excellent, you know that." Victoria turned to face him, and Daniel was struck by how tired she looked, shadows under her eyes, the kind of exhaustion that came from not sleeping well. "We need to talk about what happened at the party." "Nothing happened," Daniel said automatically, the professional deflection rising instinctively. "Don't." Victoria's voice was sharp. "Don't insult both our intelligence by pretending it was just a dance. I felt it. You felt it. And now we need to decide what we're going to do about it." Daniel moved further into the room, maintaining distance from her desk. "What do you want to do about it?" The smart thing would be to ignore it, maintain professional boundaries, pretend it was a momentary lapse brought on by wine and Halloween and proximity. She crossed her arms, a defensive posture. That's what HR would advise. That's what every corporate governance training says. I'm your boss, you're my employee. The power differential alone makes this impossible. "But," Daniel prompted, because there was clearly a but coming. Victoria's expression softened into something vulnerable and uncertain. But I can't stop thinking about you, and I'm too old and too tired to play games about it. So I'm asking directly, do you feel this too? Or am I manufacturing attraction where none exists? The honesty gutted him. Daniel had prepared for many versions of this conversation, but not one where Victoria laid herself bare first, taking the risk, offering him the power to reject her. It would have been easier if she'd been clinical about it, if she'd approached this like a business problem requiring a business solution. I feel it, he admitted. I felt it since you fixed my tie. Maybe before that. But Victoria, he used her first name deliberately, testing the intimacy of it. This is complicated. You're right about the power differential. If this goes wrong, I lose my job. My daughter loses stability. I can't take that risk lightly. I would never use my position against you, Victoria said fiercely. If this doesn't work, if we try and it falls apart, your job is secure. I'll put that in writing if you need me to. It's not about the guarantee. It's about, Daniel struggled to articulate the fear, what happens when people find out? Because they will find out. Office relationships don't stay secret, and when they do, what does that do to my credibility? To yours? Do I become the guy who slept his way to job security? Do you become the CEO who can't separate professional from personal? Victoria was quiet for a long moment, processing the legitimate concerns. Then she moved to her desk, pulled out a file folder, and handed it to Daniel. This is the org chart restructuring I've been planning for Q1. It hasn't been announced yet, but Patricia's being promoted to Director of Engineering. She'll be hiring a new team lead for healthcare systems. That lead will be your direct supervisor, which means I won't be in your management chain anymore. Daniel opened the folder, scanning the proposed changes. When were you planning to announce this? Next month. But I can accelerate it if... She stopped, meeting his eyes. If that removes one of your obstacles. You're restructuring your company to date me? I'm restructuring my company because it makes operational sense. Patricia's been ready for a director role for 2 years. The fact that it also resolves a potential conflict of interest is simply convenient timing. Victoria's mouth quirked. I'm not completely reckless, Daniel. I've been thinking about this all week, running scenarios, looking for solutions. He should have been alarmed by her level of premeditation. Instead, Daniel found himself absurdly charmed by the idea of Victoria approaching attraction like a strategic planning problem, analyzing variables, mitigating risks. It was so fundamentally her that he almost laughed. What about Lily? He asked instead. The question clearly surprised her. What about her? She's 8. She's been through massive trauma. She's finally stable and happy. If you and I start something, if she gets attached to you and then it doesn't work out, Daniel's throat tightened. I can't do that to her. I won't. Victoria's expression shifted into something tender and devastating. Then we go slowly, carefully. We don't introduce complications until we're sure, and if we get to the point where I meet Lily, it's because we both believe this is going somewhere permanent. That's a lot of certainty for someone who hasn't even been on a first date. Is it? Victoria moved closer, cautious, giving him space to retreat if he wanted. I'm 38 years old. I've built a company from nothing. I've dated extensively and badly. I know what I want. And She paused, choosing her words carefully. I haven't felt this interested in someone in years, maybe ever. So yes, I'm willing to be patient, to go slowly, to earn the right to be part of your life and your daughter's life if you'll let me. Daniel could feel the walls he'd carefully constructed crumbling, the logical arguments, the risk assessments, the fear of disruption, all of it dissolving under the simple honesty of her wanting him. He thought about Lily's comment, that he should date, that he was lonely. He thought about the past 6 years of existing in survival mode, never quite living, just getting through days. He thought about Victoria's hand in his, 3 minutes of dancing that had felt more real than anything since Sarah died. One date, he said finally, somewhere outside of work. Somewhere we can just be 2 people getting to know each other without job titles or org charts or any of this. He gestured at the office, the trappings of corporate hierarchy. And if it goes well, we talk about next steps, together. Victoria's smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. One date, I can work with that. She pulled out her phone, already strategizing. Are you free Saturday evening? I know a restaurant in Fremont, very low-key, unlikely to run into work colleagues. I'd need to arrange childcare, Daniel said, his mind already calculating logistics. Is your mother-in-law available? The casual question, asked without judgment or awkwardness, told Daniel that Victoria had been thinking about this even more carefully than he'd realized, that she'd considered the practical realities of dating a single parent, had done her research, had planned for complications. Probably, he admitted. She's been encouraging me to have a social life. Smart woman, Victoria made a note on her phone. Saturday at 7. I'll text you the address. And Daniel? She looked up, her expression serious. Thank you for being honest, for taking this seriously, for not just, she gestured vaguely, jumping in without thinking about consequences. I have an 8-year-old who depends on me to make good decisions, Daniel said. Thinking about consequences is basically my default mode. It's one of the things I like about you, Victoria said softly. Daniel left her office with a date scheduled and the surreal sense that his carefully controlled life had just veered wildly off script. He returned to his desk, to his code and his deadlines, but his concentration was shot. Marcus noticed immediately. You okay, man? You look like you just got good news and bad news simultaneously. Something like that, Daniel muttered, pulling up his current project and staring at it without comprehension. Saturday couldn't come fast enough, and simultaneously, Saturday was approaching far too quickly. The week passed in a strange suspension, Daniel hyper-aware of Victoria's presence while trying to maintain professional distance. They didn't speak privately again, communicating only in group meetings and email threads, nothing that would raise eyebrows. But there were moments, Victoria bringing coffee to the healthcare team's deadline sprint, her hand brushing Daniel's shoulder as she set down his cup. The way she laughed at his explanation of a technical problem during the all-hands meeting, genuine delight rather than polite courtesy. Small things that probably meant nothing to anyone else but felt weighted with significance to Daniel. Friday evening, he picked up Lily from school and broke the news over dinner. So I have a work thing tomorrow night, he said carefully, stabbing at his chicken. Grandma Ruth said she'd love to have you for a sleepover. Lily looked up from her rice, eyes narrowing with the suspicious intelligence of a child who knew when she was being managed. What kind of work thing? Just dinner, team building. On a Saturday night? It's complicated. Is it a date? Lily asked bluntly. Daniel set down his fork. Why would you think that? Because you're acting weird, and you keep checking your phone. And you bought new socks. She pointed at the shopping bag by the door that Daniel had forgotten to hide. You only buy new socks when something important is happening. He'd clearly underestimated his daughter's observational skills. It's dinner with someone from work. It might be a date. I'm not sure yet. Lily considered this, chewing thoughtfully. Is it someone nice? Very nice. Do they know about Mom? The question hit harder than Daniel expected. Yes, they know. And they're okay with it? With you having a kid and being sad sometimes? Daniel's throat tightened. They seem to be. But Lily, this is very new. It might not turn into anything. So I don't want you to worry about it or get your hopes up or… Daddy. Lily reached across the table to pat his hand with the kind of parental patience usually directed the other way. I know you're scared, but Ms. Jennifer's dad found someone nice, and he's happy now. You deserve to be happy too. When did you get so wise? Daniel asked, his vision blurring slightly. I'm 8.5, Lily said with immense dignity. Practically grown up. Saturday evening arrived with clear skies and the kind of crisp autumn air that made Seattle feel almost magical. Daniel dressed carefully, dark jeans, button-down shirt, the new socks that Lily had called him out on, and tried to calm his racing heart. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been this nervous. His first date with Sarah had been easy, comfortable. 2 college kids grabbing pizza and discovering they liked the same obscure bands. This felt monumentally more significant, weighted with the knowledge of what he stood to lose if it went wrong. Ruth picked up Lily at 6, giving Daniel a knowing look but mercifully keeping her opinions to herself. Have a good time, she said simply. And don't rush home. Lily and I are going to make cookies and watch movies until we pass out. The restaurant was exactly as Victoria had described. small, tucked away on a side street in Fremont, the kind of place that locals loved and tourists never found. Daniel arrived 10 minutes early and waited outside, debating whether going in alone would seem too eager or waiting outside would seem too anxious. He was saved from the decision when Victoria appeared from the opposite direction, walking with the same purposeful stride she used at the office, but dressed down in jeans and a cashmere sweater that made her look younger, more approachable, less like a CEO and more like a woman on a date. "Hi," she said, slightly breathless, like she'd been hurrying. "Hi," Daniel replied, and suddenly they were both smiling like idiots, the nervous energy crackling between them. "Should we?" Victoria gestured at the door. "Yes, definitely. Food. Let's do that." They were seated at a corner table with soft lighting and enough ambient noise to make conversation feel private. Victoria ordered wine, Daniel ordered a beer, and then they sat looking at their menus while carefully not looking at each other. "This is weird," Victoria said finally. "So weird," Daniel agreed. "At the office, I know how to talk to you. We have context, projects, goals. But here," she set down her menu, "I don't know how to do this. How to be just Victoria on a date rather than Victoria Hale, CEO." "Tell me something I don't know," Daniel suggested. "Something that's not in your LinkedIn profile or your Forbes interview." Victoria's eyes widened slightly, and Daniel realized with a jolt that she'd probably Googled him, done her research, knew far more about his background than he knew about hers. The thought should have felt invasive, but instead felt oddly intimate, like she'd cared enough to look. "I'm an only child," Victoria said after a moment. "My father was military, moved us every 2 years. I went to 11 different schools before college. I got very good at being whoever people needed me to be, at fitting in quickly and leaving cleanly." She paused. "I'm not sure I ever learned how to stay." The admission was quiet, vulnerable, and Daniel understood immediately that she was offering him something real, something that cost her to share. "Is that why you started your own company? So you'd have something permanent?" "Probably. My therapist would have a field day with that analysis." Victoria smiled, but there was old pain underneath it. "What about you? What's something I don't know?" Daniel thought about his carefully curated professional persona, the resume that showed competence but hid the chaos. "I'm terrified all the time," he admitted, "that I'm doing it wrong, that Lily will grow up damaged because I can't be both mother and father, that I'll never feel like I'm enough." He took a drink of his beer. "And I'm scared of this, of letting someone in, of what happens if I care about you and then lose you too." I can't promise you won't lose me," Victoria said quietly. "Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise I won't leave easily, that if this becomes something, I'm all in. I don't do casual." "Good," Daniel said, "because I have an 8-year-old and a career I can't afford to jeopardize. Casual isn't in my vocabulary either." The waiter arrived to take their orders, providing a momentary reprieve from the intensity. They ordered, Victoria chose pasta, Daniel went with salmon, and then settled into easier conversation. They talked about books they'd read, movies that had made them cry, the weird quirks of Seattle culture. Victoria told stories about the early days of Hale Industries, working out of a basement office with 2 employees and dreams bigger than her credit limit. Daniel shared moments from Lily's childhood, the funny things she said, her obsession with building things, her complete inability to tell a lie convincingly. "She sounds remarkable," Victoria said, genuine warmth in her voice. "She is. She's the best thing I ever did." Daniel hesitated, then pushed forward. "Can I ask about your family? You mentioned your father was military, but nothing about a mother?" Victoria finished. She took a sip of wine. "She left when I was 12, couldn't handle the moving, the isolation, the emotional unavailability of a career military husband. She wanted stability and normal and all the things that my father couldn't provide. So she left." There was no self-pity in the telling, just flat recitation of facts. "I saw her occasionally after that, holidays and birthdays, but it was never the same. She remarried, had other kids, built the normal life she wanted. I didn't really fit into that picture." "I'm sorry," Daniel said, and meant it. "Don't be. It taught me to be self-sufficient, to build my own security instead of depending on someone else to provide it." Victoria met his eyes. though I'm beginning to think maybe I took that lesson too far. Built walls so high that I forgot how to let people in. Is that what you're doing now? Letting me in? Trying to, Victoria corrected. It's harder than I expected. But you make it, she searched for the word, easier, less terrifying, like maybe it's worth the risk. The conversation flowed easier after that, the initial awkwardness dissolving into something natural and comfortable. They lingered over dessert, neither wanting the evening to end, and when the check finally came, Victoria reached for it automatically. I've got it, Daniel protested. I invited you, and I make considerably more money than you do. Let me. That feels weird. It shouldn't. But if it makes you feel better, you can get the next one. Victoria's smile was sly, assuming there is a next one. There better be, Daniel said. I bought new socks for this. Victoria laughed, genuine and delighted, and Daniel felt something in his chest unknot. They walked out into the cool evening, neither quite ready to separate. I parked 2 blocks over, Victoria said. Where are you? Bus stop is that way. Daniel pointed. I'll walk you. She fell into step beside him, their hands nearly touching. Is that weird? Walking you to the bus stop? It's nice, Daniel said honestly. They walked in comfortable silence, the city settling into its Saturday night rhythm around them. When they reached the bus stop, Victoria turned to face him, and Daniel was struck again by how different she looked outside the office. Softer, younger, more uncertain. I had a really good time, she said. Me too. So, next steps. We agreed to talk about them together. Daniel glanced at the digital display showing his bus was 3 minutes away. I'd like to do this again soon, but slowly, like we discussed. Get to know each other outside of work. See if this, he gestured between them, translates to something sustainable. How many dates before you'd consider introducing me to Lily? Victoria asked directly. The question caught him off guard. I don't know, 5, 10, when it feels right. That's fair. And in the meantime, at work? Professional, Daniel said firmly. No one needs to know, not yet. Not until we're sure this is going somewhere. Victoria nodded, but Daniel caught a flicker of something in her expression. Disappointment, maybe, or concern. What? He asked. Nothing. She paused, choosing words carefully. I don't love the idea of hiding. It feels dishonest. But I understand why it's necessary. It's not about hiding, Daniel said gently. It's about protecting something fragile until it's strong enough to withstand scrutiny. Once we're sure, once we're serious, then we tell people. But not before. How will we know when we're sure? The bus was approaching, its headlights cutting through the evening darkness. Daniel made a split-second decision and leaned in, pressing a soft, brief kiss to Victoria's lips. She tasted like wine and tiramisu and possibility. We'll know, he said against her mouth, then pulled back as the bus hissed to a stop beside them. Victoria stood on the sidewalk, her fingers touching her lips, eyes wide with surprise and something that looked like wonder. Text me when you get home, she called as Daniel boarded. I will, he promised. The bus pulled away and Daniel watched her through the window, standing under the streetlight in her cashmere sweater and jeans, looking nothing like a CEO and everything like someone he could love. The thought terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. His phone buzzed before he'd made it 3 blocks. Victoria. That was unexpected. Daniel. Good. Unexpected or bad unexpected? Victoria. The best kind of unexpected. When can I see you again? Daniel. Tuesday dinner? There's a Thai place near my apartment. Very casual. Victoria. It's a date. Literally. Daniel smiled at his phone like a teenager, earning a knowing look from the woman sitting across from him. He didn't care. For the first time in 6 years, he felt something beyond mere survival. He felt hope. The next 2 weeks unfolded in a delicate balance of professional distance and private connection. At work, Daniel and Victoria maintained careful boundaries, polite in meetings, collaborative on projects, nothing that would attract attention or speculation. But evenings were different. They met for dinner 3 more times, each date extending longer than the last, conversation flowing easily from work to family to dreams to fears. They discovered shared tastes in music and complete disagreement on the merits of pineapple on pizza. Victoria admitted she couldn't cook to save her life. Daniel confessed he found her competence devastatingly attractive. They kissed at the end of each date, never more than that, both aware they were building something that required patience. But the physical attraction was undeniable, a current that ran beneath every conversation, every accidental touch, every moment of eye contact that lasted too long. On their fourth date, walking through the sculpture park at Olympic Park, Victoria took his hand. It was such a simple gesture, but Daniel felt it like an electric shock, the deliberate choice to touch him, to claim some level of intimacy in public. Their fingers laced together naturally, and they walked in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the Olympics in shades of purple and gold. "I need to tell you something," Victoria said eventually. Daniel's stomach dropped. "Okay." The org chart restructuring gets announced Monday. Patricia's promotion goes live, and you'll officially be out of my direct management chain. She stopped walking, turning to face him. "Which means we can stop hiding, if you want to." "What do you want?" Daniel asked. "I want," Victoria paused, vulnerability flickering across her face. "I want to be able to smile at you at work without calculating whether someone will notice. I want to send you emails that aren't strictly professional. I want to have lunch together without it being a covert operation." She squeezed his hand. "But I also want you to be comfortable. If you need more time before we go public, I understand." Daniel thought about the past 2 weeks, the careful choreography of avoidance, the way his heart jumped every time Victoria entered a room and he had to pretend indifference. He thought about Marcus's knowing looks and Patricia's casual comment that he seemed happier lately. He thought about the fact that secrets were corrosive, that hiding took energy he'd rather spend on actually building something. "Let's tell people," he said. "After the restructuring is announced, after it's clear there's no conflict of interest. We sit down with HR, disclose the relationship properly, make sure everything is documented and above board." "You've been thinking about this," Victoria observed. "I have an 8-year-old who asks questions like a prosecutor. Planning for contingencies is self-defense." Daniel pulled her closer, his free hand finding her waist. "But also, I like you, a lot, and I'm tired of pretending I don't." Victoria's smile was bright enough to rival the sunset. "I like you too, a lot." They kissed there in the park with joggers passing by and the Seattle skyline glittering in the distance, and Daniel felt something shift, the careful guardedness he'd maintained since Sarah died, finally beginning to ease. That evening, after dropping Victoria at her car with promises to see each other tomorrow, Daniel picked up Lily from Ruth's house. "Did you have fun on your date?" Lily asked immediately, because subtlety was not her strong suit. "I did," Daniel admitted. "Are you going to see them again?" "Her, and yes, actually I was thinking—" He paused, suddenly nervous about a conversation with his 8-year-old. "Maybe soon you could meet her, if you wanted to, no pressure." Lily's eyes went huge. "Really? When? What's her name? What does she do? Does she like science?" "Her name is Victoria. She runs a company, and I don't know if she likes science, but I bet she'd love to hear about your seatbelt project." "Can she come to the science fair?" Lily asked, already 3 steps ahead. "It's in 2 weeks, and Ms. Chen said we can invite family and important people, and I think if she's important to you, then she's important to me." Daniel's throat tightened with emotion. Yes, I'll ask her. But Lily, I need you to understand something." He pulled over to the curb, wanting her full attention for this. "Victoria is not replacing Mom. No one will ever replace Mom. But she's someone I care about, and if this goes well, she might become a permanent part of our lives. Is that okay with you?" Lily was quiet for a long moment, and Daniel could see her processing, working through the implications with the seriousness she brought to everything important. "Mom would want you to be happy," she said finally. "She told me that. Before the accident. She said that no matter what happened, she wanted us both to be happy and take care of each other." "She said that to you?" Daniel asked, his voice cracking. "She said a lot of things. I didn't understand all of them then, but I think I do now." Lily reached over to take his hand, role reversal complete. "So yes, Daddy, it's okay. You can be happy. And I want to meet Victoria." Daniel pulled his daughter into a hug, overwhelmed by her courage and compassion, by the reality that he'd somehow managed to raise this remarkable human despite his constant fear of doing it wrong. "I love you, Lily Cross." "I love you too," she said into his shoulder. "Now can we go home? I'm hungry, and you promised pizza." The science fair invitation hung between Daniel and Victoria like a test, a threshold that would fundamentally change the nature of their relationship. He brought it up over coffee on Sunday morning at a small cafe near Green Lake where they'd started meeting for weekend breakfast. "Lily wants to invite you to her science fair," he said without preamble. "It's 2 weeks from Friday. No pressure. But she asked specifically, and I wanted to give you the option to decline gracefully if—" "I'd love to come," Victoria interrupted. "If you're sure. If you think it's the right time." "I think my daughter just gave me permission to be happy," Daniel said quietly. "I think that makes it exactly the right time." Victoria reached across the table, lacing her fingers through his. "Then I'll be there. And Daniel, I'll do everything I can to earn her trust. I promise." "I know," he said, and realized he meant it. Whatever happened next, whatever complications arose, he trusted Victoria to handle them with the same care and intentionality she brought to everything else. Monday morning, the org chart restructuring was announced. Patricia was promoted to Director of Engineering with appropriate fanfare and a company-wide email from Victoria. A new team lead position was posted for the Healthcare Systems Group, and Daniel found himself reporting to Patricia's organizational chain rather than directly to the CEO's office. The change was seamless, professional, and removed the last major obstacle to their relationship being public knowledge. Tuesday afternoon, Daniel and Victoria sat down with HR to formally disclose their relationship. The meeting was professional, slightly awkward, and completely necessary. They signed acknowledgement forms, confirmed no conflict of interest existed, and listened to a brief reminder about maintaining professional conduct in the workplace. The HR director, a woman named Sandra with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, wished them well and reminded them that Hale Industries supported employee relationships as long as they didn't interfere with work performance or create hostile environments. By Wednesday, the office grapevine had done its work. Daniel arrived to find Marcus grinning like he'd won a bet. "I knew it," Marcus crowed. "I told Jennifer you two had chemistry. She said I was reading too much into the tie comment. I said, no way. CEOs don't comment on ties unless something's happening. I win $20. "You bet on my love life?" Daniel asked, caught between amusement and horror. "Everyone bet on your love life. You and Victoria were the worst-kept secret in the office." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "But seriously, man, good for you. She seems great, and you've been way less stressed lately." The response was similar throughout the office: casual interest, mild surprise, general approval. No one seemed particularly scandalized, and the few raised eyebrows came more from curiosity than judgment. By Friday, their relationship was simply accepted office fact, mentioned in the same breath as Patricia's promotion and the upcoming holiday party. Victoria seemed relieved by the easy acceptance. "I was worried there'd be more pushback," she admitted over dinner that evening. "Rumors about favoritism or concerns about professionalism." "I think people just want to see you happy," Daniel said. "And also, I'm very good at my job, so it's hard to claim favoritism when my work speaks for itself." "Confidence looks good on you," Victoria said, her smile warm. "You look good on me," Daniel replied, then immediately regretted the cheesy line. But Victoria laughed, delighted, and Daniel realized this was what happiness felt like: being able to be ridiculous without judgment, to try and fail at charm, and be loved anyway. The 2 weeks before the science fair passed in a blur of work and family and stolen moments with Victoria. They fell into a rhythm that felt sustainable, natural, right. Weeknight dinners at casual restaurants where they could talk for hours. Weekend mornings at the cafe by Green Lake. Quick coffee breaks at the office that were now permitted rather than covert. They were taking it slowly, deliberately, but the trajectory was clear. This was becoming something permanent, something that mattered. The night before the science fair, Daniel lay awake on his pull-out couch, staring at the ceiling and trying to manage his anxiety. Tomorrow, Victoria would meet Lily properly, would see his life unfiltered, the cramped apartment, the chaos of an 8-year-old's enthusiasms, The reality of single parenthood that couldn't be hidden or managed. What if Lily didn't like her? What if Victoria saw his life and realized she wanted no part of it? What if he was moving too fast, asking too much, risking everything he'd carefully built? His phone buzzed with a text. Victoria, are you awake? Daniel, can't sleep. Tomorrow feels important. Victoria, it is important, and I'm terrified. What if she doesn't like me? The admission made Daniel smile despite his anxiety. They were both scared, both vulnerable, both risking something real. Daniel, then we keep trying. She's 8, not a final arbiter of all decisions, but for what it's worth, I think she'll love you. Victoria, how can you be sure? Daniel, because I do, and Lily has excellent taste. There was a long pause before Victoria responded. Victoria, you've never said that before, that you love me. Daniel's heart hammered. He hadn't meant to confess via text message at midnight, but the words were out now, true and terrifying. Daniel, I'm saying it now. I love you. I don't know when it happened exactly, but it's true. And tomorrow, when you meet my daughter, you should know that. Victoria, I love you too. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start building something real. Daniel set down his phone, his heart full and his anxiety replaced by something more profound, certainty. Whatever happened next, they'd face it together. The morning of the science fair arrived with unseasonable sunshine, the kind of crisp November day that made Seattle feel like it was showing off. Daniel woke to Lily bouncing on his pull-out couch with the manic energy of a child who'd been planning this moment for weeks. Daddy, we need to leave in 45 minutes, and you're still in bed, and I need to make sure my display board is perfect. And did you remember to print the extra photos I asked for? And what if no one understands my research? And what if... Lily, breathe, Daniel said, catching her mid-bounce and pulling her down beside him. We have plenty of time. Your board is perfect. I printed the photos, and everyone is going to understand your research because you're brilliant and you've practiced your presentation 17 times. 16, Lily corrected. We only did it 16 times. My mistake. 16 times, which means you're more than ready. Daniel stood, stretching muscles that protested the inadequacy of the pull-out mattress. Go eat breakfast. I'll shower and then we'll load everything in the car. They'd rented a car for the occasion, a practical sedan that Daniel had picked up the night before because transporting a foam core display board and a working prototype of an improved child safety restraint system on public transit was a logistical nightmare he refused to attempt. The expense made his budget scream, but watching Lily's face light up when she saw they had a car for the day made it worth every penny. The science fair was scheduled from 10 to noon in Roosevelt Elementary's gymnasium, with parents and judges circulating through student projects set up on long tables. Daniel and Lily arrived at 9:30 to claim their assigned space and begin setup. The gym was already filling with families, the air buzzing with nervous excitement and the chemical smell of poster board and rubber cement. Lily's project occupied the corner spot, her display board professionally printed thanks to Victoria's suggestion that Daniel use the company's graphics department. The centerpiece was a modified car seat she'd acquired from a thrift store and augmented with additional padding, a 5-point harness system she'd designed herself, and impact-absorbing materials she'd tested by dropping eggs from increasingly alarming heights. Her research documentation was thorough, her hypothesis clearly stated, her conclusions supported by actual data she'd collected with Daniel's help. It looks amazing, baby, Daniel said, straightening the last photo. You should be really proud. Do you think Victoria will like it? Lily asked, suddenly nervous in a way she hadn't been about the judges or her classmates. Daniel crouched down to her level. She's going to love it. But remember what we talked about. She's coming to meet you, not just to see your project. You can ask her questions. You can tell her if you're uncomfortable. You're in charge of how fast this goes, okay? Lily nodded seriously. What if I like her? Then you like her. That's allowed. What if I don't? Daniel took a breath, choosing honesty over reassurance. Then we talk about it. All three of us, like adults. I'm not going to make you pretend to like someone you don't, but I'm asking you to give her a fair chance. That's reasonable, Lily said, unconsciously echoing one of her teacher's favorite phrases. She smoothed down her dress, navy blue with small white stars, chosen specifically for today, and squared her shoulders. I'm ready. Victoria arrived at 10:15, navigating through the crowded gymnasium with the same purposeful grace she brought to corporate hallways. She wore jeans and a sweater, deliberately casual, carrying a small gift bag that made Daniel's heart clench with appreciation for the thoughtfulness. She'd understood without being told that showing up empty-handed would seem dismissive, but arriving with an elaborate gift would seem like she was trying too hard. Their eyes met across the gym, and Daniel saw his own nervousness reflected in her expression. He waved, and she made her way through the crowd, pausing once to let a group of excited third graders rush past with their volcano experiment. "Hi," Victoria said when she reached them, directing the greeting to Lily rather than Daniel. "You must be Lily. I'm Victoria. Your dad has told me so much about you." Lily studied her with the unblinking intensity of a child conducting an evaluation. "He's told me about you too. You run a company, and you can't cook, and you think pineapple belongs on pizza." Victoria's eyes widened slightly, and she shot Daniel a look that was equal parts amused and horrified. "He told you about the pineapple?" "He tells me everything," Lily said. "We don't keep secrets in our family." "That's a good policy," Victoria said carefully, and Daniel could see her recalibrating, understanding that this 8-year-old was not going to be charmed by surface-level small talk. "I brought you something, just a small thing for good luck with the judges." She handed over the gift bag. Lily opened it with methodical precision, removing tissue paper to reveal a leather-bound journal with her name embossed on the cover in gold lettering and a set of high-quality drafting pencils. "For your future projects," Victoria explained. "Your dad mentioned you like to build things, and every engineer needs a good notebook for ideas." Lily ran her fingers over the embossed letters, her expression carefully neutral. "Thank you. This is very nice." "You're welcome." Victoria gestured at the display board. "Would you tell me about your project? Your dad said it's about safety systems." And just like that, Lily transformed from wary child to enthusiastic scientist, launching into her practiced presentation with the passion of someone explaining something that genuinely mattered. She walked Victoria through her hypothesis, her testing methodology, her results. She demonstrated the modified harness system, explained the materials she'd chosen and why, discussed the limitations of her current prototype and her ideas for future improvements. Victoria listened with complete attention, asking questions that showed she was actually engaging with the content rather than just being polite. "What made you interested in car safety specifically?" she asked when Lily paused for breath. Lily glanced at Daniel, seeking permission. He nodded slightly, letting her decide how much to share. "My mom died in a car accident," Lily said, her voice steady despite the weight of the words. "The car was safe, but accidents happen anyway. I can't stop accidents, but maybe I can make cars safer for other kids, so fewer people lose their moms." The gymnasium noise seemed to fade. Victoria's expression shifted into something raw and aching, and when she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "That's the most important reason to do science I've ever heard. Your mom would be incredibly proud of you." "Did you know her?" Lily asked, genuinely curious. "No, but I know you, and I know your dad, and I can see what an amazing person you are. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because someone loved you enough to raise you right." Lily considered this, then nodded as if Victoria had passed some internal test. "Do you want to see how the impact absorption works?" "I have eggs." Daniel exhaled slowly, realizing he'd been holding his breath. Victoria caught his eye over Lily's head, and the look they shared was profound, relief and gratitude, and the beginning of something that felt like family. The next hour passed in a blur of demonstrations and judge interviews and Lily's barely contained excitement. Victoria stayed close, asking questions and offering encouragement, but never overstepping, always deferring to Daniel when Lily needed parental guidance. She fit into their dynamic with surprising ease, neither trying too hard nor holding herself apart, just being present in a way that felt natural. When the judges announced the winners just before noon, Lily took second place in the third grade division for engineering. She accepted her ribbon with grace and only minor disappointment that she hadn't won first, already analyzing what she could improve for next year. "Second place is amazing," Victoria said, as they walked out of the school into the autumn sunshine. "You should celebrate. Have you had lunch?" "We were going to get burgers," Daniel said. "There's a place Lily loves about 10 minutes from here." "Can Victoria come?" Lily asked, then immediately looked embarrassed by her own enthusiasm. "I'd love to," Victoria said quickly, "if that's okay with your dad." Daniel felt something warm unfurl in his chest. More than okay. They piled into the rental car, Lily chattering about the other projects she'd seen and the questions the judges had asked. Victoria sat in the passenger seat, her hand resting casually on the center console where Daniel could reach it at stoplights. It felt remarkably domestic, achingly normal, just a family out for lunch after a school event. The burger place was a local institution, the kind of spot with red vinyl booths and a jukebox that played actual records. They ordered at the counter and claimed a booth in the back, Lily sliding in first and patting the seat beside her in clear invitation for Victoria to join her side. Daniel sat across from them, watching his daughter warm to this woman with a speed that was both heartening and terrifying. "So," Lily said, dunking a French fry in ketchup with intense concentration, "are you Daddy's girlfriend?" Daniel choked on his water. Victoria handled the question with impressive composure. "I am," she said. "Is that okay with you?" "I guess," Lily said. "He seems happier now. He smiles more. He used to be sad all the time after Mom died, but now he's less sad." "Lily," Daniel started, but Victoria shook her head slightly. "That must have been hard," Victoria said gently. "Watching your dad be sad." "It was very hard," Lily confirmed. "I tried to make him happy by being good and not asking for things we couldn't afford and getting good grades. But sometimes people are sad no matter what you do." Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You're right, sometimes sadness just needs time. But it sounds like you took very good care of your dad." "We took care of each other," Lily corrected. "That's what families do." "It is," Victoria agreed. She took a breath, seeming to gather courage. "Can I tell you something about my family?" Lily nodded, giving her full attention. "My mom left when I was a little older than you. She didn't die, she just left. Decided she didn't want to be married to my dad anymore, didn't want the life we had. And for a long time I was angry about that. Thought there must be something wrong with me, that I wasn't enough to make her stay." Victoria paused, clearly weighing how much to share with an 8-year-old. "But I learned that sometimes people leave, and it's not about you. It's about them and what they need, and choices that have nothing to do with whether you're lovable or worthy." "That's sad," Lily said simply. "It was. But it also taught me to build my own family, to choose people who choose me back, and to never take for granted when someone lets me into their life." Victoria looked at Daniel, then back to Lily. "So when your dad told me about you, about how smart and brave you are, about how you two take care of each other, I knew I wanted to be part of that. If you'll let me." Lily ate another French fry, processing this with her characteristic seriousness. "Would you live with us?" The question hung in the air, direct and impossible to deflect. Daniel opened his mouth to intervene, to explain that they weren't at that stage yet, that there were steps and timelines, and "not right away," Victoria said calmly. "Your dad and I are still getting to know each other, but maybe someday, if things keep going well, if we all decide it's what we want, then yes, that would make me very happy." "We only have one bedroom," Lily pointed out. "Daddy sleeps on the couch." "Then maybe we'd need to find a bigger place," Victoria said. "One where everyone has their own room and space for all your building projects." "With a workshop?" Lily asked, eyes lighting up. "Definitely with a workshop." Daniel watched this exchange with a mixture of terror and wonder. They were talking about a future he'd barely let himself imagine, mapping out possibilities with the casual confidence of people who believed in happy endings. Part of him wanted to pump the brakes, to remind everyone that they'd only been dating for a month, that moving in together and blended families were complicated and fraught with potential disaster. But the larger part of him, the part that had been carefully guarded since Sarah died, was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. The rest of lunch passed in easier conversation. Lily peppered Victoria with questions about her job, her company, whether she'd ever built anything besides a business. Victoria answered honestly, admitting she had zero practical building skills but deep appreciation for people who did. She told stories about difficult clients and software disasters, making Lily laugh with her dramatic reenactments. She asked about Lily's other interests, her friends, her favorite subjects in school. By the time they finished eating, Lily was leaning against Victoria's shoulder, showing her photos on Daniel's phone of past building projects. A birdhouse that collapsed in the first rain, a catapult that had worked too well and launched a tennis ball through the kitchen window, a Rube Goldberg machine that had taken over the entire living room for 3 weeks. "You're quite the engineer," Victoria said, scrolling through the chaos documented in the photos. "I get it from Mom," Lily said. "She was an architect. She designed buildings and houses and made sure they wouldn't fall down." "That's a wonderful legacy," Victoria said softly. They drove back to Daniel's apartment building, where he needed to return the rental car. Victoria had driven her own car to the school, and the plan had been for them to part ways there, but Lily had other ideas. "Do you want to see our apartment?" she asked Victoria as they stood in the parking lot. "It's small, but Daddy keeps it very clean, and we have a good view of the neighbor's garden." Victoria looked to Daniel for permission. He nodded, both nervous and resigned to his daughter's enthusiastic matchmaking. The apartment looked exactly like what it was, a temporary space occupied by people making do. Daniel saw it through Victoria's eyes and cringed at the worn furniture, the pull-out couch that dominated the living room, the kitchen that was barely functional. But Victoria didn't comment on the size or the shabbiness. Instead, she noticed the things that mattered. The photos of Sarah prominently displayed, the shelf of Lily's building projects, the evidence of a life carefully maintained despite limited resources. "This is nice," Victoria said, and Daniel could tell she meant it. "It feels like a home." Lily dragged her to see the bedroom, pointing out her rock collection and her library of engineering books and the growth chart marked on the doorframe. Victoria admired everything with genuine interest, asking questions and listening to answers, never once patronizing or dismissive. Daniel made coffee while they talked, listening to the sound of Lily's laughter mixing with Victoria's lower voice, and felt something in his chest ease. This was what he'd been afraid of, bringing Victoria into his real life, letting her see the full reality of single parenthood and financial constraints and still-present grief. But instead of being scared off, she seemed to be leaning in, making space for herself in their small world. When Lily finally ran out of things to show and wandered off to play with Legos, Victoria joined Daniel in the kitchen, accepting a mug of coffee with a tired smile. "That was intense," she said quietly. "She can be a lot," Daniel agreed. "If it's too much, it's not too much. It's perfect." Victoria wrapped her hands around the mug. "She's remarkable, Daniel, truly. You've done an incredible job with her. I'm terrified every day that I'm screwing it up." "That probably means you're doing it right." Victoria glanced toward the bedroom where Lily was humming to herself, lost in construction. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything?" "The photos of Sarah. You keep them everywhere. Talk about her openly. Let Lily remember her." Victoria's expression was carefully neutral. "Does it bother you that I'm here? That I'm becoming part of your life when she was my wife," Daniel finished. "And I loved her, and I still love her in a way. The way you love someone who shaped who you are, who gave you the best parts of your life." He set down his coffee, needing Victoria to understand this. "But she's gone. And I spent 6 years frozen in that grief, convinced that moving forward meant betraying her memory. Until Lily told me that Sarah would want me to be happy, and I realized she was right." Victoria's eyes were bright. "So you don't feel like you're replacing her?" "You can't replace someone who is irreplaceable," Daniel said gently. "But you can build something new, something different, something that honors what was while still reaching for what could be." He took Victoria's hand. "I love you. Not because you're like Sarah or because you fill some holes she left, but because you're you, because you make me want to be brave again." Victoria set down her coffee and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Lily was standing in the doorway with a knowing expression that was far too sophisticated for an 8-year-old. "Are you guys being mushy?" she asked. "Very mushy," Daniel confirmed. "Good," Lily said. "You should be mushy. Ms. Jennifer says her dad and stepmom are mushy all the time, and it's annoying but also nice because it means they're happy." She paused. "I think you're happy." "I think I am too," Daniel said. Lily returned to her Legos, satisfied with this assessment. Victoria stayed for another hour, helping Lily with her construction project, and chatting with Daniel about work and weekend plans, and the thousand small details that made up a shared life. When she finally left, kissing Daniel goodbye in the hallway where neighbors might see, Lily pronounced her verdict. "I like her," she said from her position on the floor, surrounded by plastic bricks. "She listens good, and she doesn't treat me like I'm dumb." "She doesn't treat you like you're dumb," Daniel corrected automatically. "That's what I said." "So you're okay with me dating her? Seriously dating her?" Lily looked up, her gray eyes, Sarah's eyes, solemn and wise beyond her years. "Daddy, I'm 8. You don't need my permission to date someone. But since you're asking, yes, I'm okay with it. She makes you smile, and she thinks my projects are cool, and she didn't pretend Mom doesn't exist. That's important." Daniel crossed the room and pulled his daughter into a hug, overwhelmed by her grace and emotional intelligence. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart," Lily said matter-of-factly. "You just notice it more when I say things you agree with." The weeks that followed the science fair settled into a new rhythm, one that included Victoria in increasingly integrated ways. She started joining them for weekend breakfasts at the Green Lake Cafe, sitting with Lily while Daniel ordered, listening to elaborate explanations of whatever building project was currently consuming the 8-year-old's attention. She came to Lily's soccer games, cheering from the sidelines with the kind of wholehearted enthusiasm that embarrassed Lily and delighted Daniel. She sent Lily articles about engineering innovations and female scientists, never pushy, but consistently interested. At work, the relationship was accepted and largely unremarked upon. Daniel's performance remained excellent, his projects delivered on time, his team collaboration strong. Victoria was scrupulous about maintaining professional boundaries, never showing favoritism, if anything holding Daniel to slightly higher standards to avoid any appearance of impropriety. They had lunch together occasionally, along with other team members. They attended the same meetings but sat separately. The office had moved on to other gossip, and their relationship became simply part of the landscape. But privately, away from work and Lily's watchful eyes, their relationship was deepening in ways that both excited and terrified Daniel. They spent evenings at Victoria's condo when Lily was with Ruth, nights that started with dinner and conversation and ended with touching that was still careful, still bounded by unspoken agreement that they were building toward something permanent and therefore shouldn't rush the physical intimacy until they were certain. "I want you," Victoria said one night in early December, curled against Daniel on her couch, her hand resting on his chest where his heart was racing. "I want all of this to move faster, but I also know we're doing this right, taking our time, making sure." "Making sure of what?" Daniel asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "That this is forever," Victoria said simply. "Because I don't do casual, and you can't do casual, and Lily deserves adults who are certain before they make promises." "I'm certain," Daniel said. "I've been certain since you fixed my tie. Everything since then has just been confirming what I already knew. That's very romantic for someone who works in software development." "I contain multitudes." Victoria laughed, pressing closer. "I'm certain too. But I want to do this right. Meet each other's families properly, spend holidays together, make sure Lily is comfortable before we make any big changes." "Big changes like moving in together?" "Eventually, maybe." Victoria pulled back enough to see his face. "Would you want that? When the time is right?" Daniel thought about his cramped apartment, his pull-out couch, the life he'd built that was functional but temporary. He thought about Victoria's spacious condo with room for everyone, about Lily having her own bedroom and workshop space, about coming home to someone who chose to be there rather than returning to an empty apartment every night after tucking his daughter into bed. "Yes," he said. "When the time is right, I'd want that very much." "Good," Victoria said, settling back against him. "Then we have a plan. Continue dating, include Lily in appropriate ways, make it through the holidays, reassess in the new year. You're planning our relationship like a project timeline. It's what I do. Does it bother you?" "No," Daniel said honestly. "It makes me feel safe, like we're both invested in making this work." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped together on the couch, planning a future that was starting to feel real and possible and surprisingly close. Thanksgiving arrived with the traditional complications of blended families and complicated histories. Daniel had promised Lily they'd spend the holiday with Ruth, Sarah's mother, who had been their anchor through the worst years and deserved their presence. But he wanted Victoria there too, wanted to start building connections between the different parts of his life. He called Ruth on a Tuesday evening while Lily was in the bath to broach the subject carefully. "I wanted to ask if I could bring someone to Thanksgiving dinner," he said. "Someone I've been seeing, someone important." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Ruth had been his mother-in-law for 7 years, his primary support system for 6 years as a widower, and she'd never been anything but gracious and supportive. But this was asking her to make space for the woman who was, however carefully, replacing her daughter in Daniel's life. "It's serious?" Ruth asked finally. "Very serious. Her name is Victoria. She's met Lily, been to the apartment, been to a soccer game. Lily likes her. I love her. And I wanted you to meet her, if you're comfortable with that." Another pause. Daniel could hear Ruth breathing, could imagine her standing in her kitchen, processing this information with the same careful thoughtfulness she brought to everything. "Sarah would want you to be happy," Ruth said quietly. "She loved you enough to want you to have a full life, even if that life didn't include her. I've known that intellectually for years, but actually facing it, actually meeting the woman who gets to have what my daughter should have had." Her voice broke slightly. "I'm sorry. That's not fair to you or to this Victoria person." "It's completely fair," Daniel said gently. "You get to feel however you feel. But Ruth, Victoria isn't trying to replace Sarah. She knows she can't. She respects Sarah's memory, respects that Lily needs to remember her mother, respects that you're Lily's grandmother and always will be." "How does she feel about me being there?" Ruth asked. Most new girlfriends probably don't love spending holidays with their boyfriend's dead wife's mother. "I think she's nervous," Daniel admitted, "but she wants to meet you, wants to be part of our whole family, which includes you." Ruth was quiet for so long that Daniel almost thought the call had dropped. Then she sighed and he could hear the smile in her voice. "Bring her. I'll set an extra place. And Daniel, I really do want you to be happy, even if it breaks my heart a little bit to see you moving on." "Thank you," Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion. "That means everything." Thanksgiving morning dawned cold and clear, the kind of day that promised evening rain but gave them a few hours of respite first. Daniel picked up Victoria at 9, driving Ruth's borrowed car because the logistics of public transit with a woman carrying 2 pies and a bottle of wine were too complex to contemplate. Lily sat in the back, unusually quiet, her nervousness about the day manifesting as uncharacteristic stillness. "Grandma Ruth is going to love you," Lily said suddenly as they crossed the bridge toward Ruth's house in Ballard. "She loves everyone, even Marcus, and he broke her favorite teacup." "Who's Marcus?" Victoria asked. "My cousin. He's 12 and very clumsy, and Grandma says he's growing so fast his brain hasn't caught up with his arms yet." Victoria laughed, some of her tension easing. "That's a very kind way to describe clumsiness." "Grandma is very kind," Lily said seriously, "even when she's sad about Mom." The conversation died there, all 3 of them contemplating the emotional complexity of the day ahead. Daniel reached over to squeeze Victoria's hand, offering reassurance he didn't entirely feel himself. Ruth's house was a small craftsman in a neighborhood that had gentrified around her, the kind of place she'd bought 40 years ago for a reasonable price, and now couldn't afford on a widow's pension if she were buying today. The yard was immaculate despite the season, the porch decorated with fall mums and a wreath made from leaves and pine cones. Ruth answered the door wearing an apron printed with turkeys, her gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, her face arranged in a welcoming smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was a small woman who'd always seemed larger than her actual size, with the kind of quiet strength that had held her family together through multiple tragedies. "Daniel, sweetheart, come in, come in." She hugged him, then Lily, then turned to Victoria with an expression that was carefully neutral. "You must be Victoria. I'm Ruth. Thank you for the pies. You didn't need to bring anything." "It's a pleasure to meet you," Victoria said, shaking Ruth's hand with appropriate firmness. "And I wanted to contribute. Daniel mentioned you're making everything from scratch, which is incredibly impressive." They moved inside into the warm chaos of a house preparing for holiday dinner. The kitchen smelled like roasting turkey and sage stuffing, the dining table already set with Ruth's good china, the living room scattered with the evidence of other family members who'd arrived early, Marcus and his parents, Sarah's brother Tom and his wife Jennifer. The introductions were awkward but manageable. Everyone was polite, curious, carefully avoiding the obvious questions about how serious things were and what Victoria's intentions might be. Marcus, true to his reputation, knocked over a glass of cranberry juice within 5 minutes of Victoria arriving, sending everyone scrambling for paper towels and providing enough distraction that the initial tension dissolved into practical crisis management. Lily attached herself to Victoria's side, showing her photos of past Thanksgivings, pointing out which dishes were traditional and which were Ruth's innovations. Victoria listened attentively, asking questions, complimenting the decorations, making all the appropriate noises about family traditions and the importance of maintaining them. Daniel watched from the kitchen where he was helping Ruth with last-minute prep, observing Victoria integrate herself into his extended family with the same careful competence she brought to everything else. "She's lovely," Ruth said quietly, pulling the turkey from the oven. "Very polished, very together." "She is," Daniel agreed. "Not like Sarah." The comparison hung in the air between them, not quite accusatory but not quite neutral either. Daniel set down the knife he'd been using to slice bread. "No," he said. "Not like Sarah. But that's okay, isn't it? Sarah was brilliant and creative and sometimes chaotic. Victoria is strategic and careful and builds systems. They're different people. I loved Sarah. I love Victoria. Both things can be true." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "I know, I do know that. But seeing you with her, seeing Lily warm to her so easily, it makes Sarah feel further away, like we're all moving on and leaving her behind." "We're not leaving her behind," Daniel said gently. "Look around, Ruth. Her photos are everywhere. Lily talks about her constantly. You make her favorite dishes every holiday. Sarah is woven into this family. Victoria isn't erasing that, she's just adding to it." "I want to believe that," Ruth said. "Then believe it. Victoria wants to know Sarah's family. She wants Lily to have connections to her mother's side. She's not threatened by the past. She respects it." Ruth wiped her eyes on her apron, nodding. Okay. I'm going to trust you on this. But if she hurts you or Lily, I reserve the right to be fierce about it." "I would expect nothing less," Daniel said, hugging her. Dinner was the controlled chaos that all family gatherings aspire to. Too much food, too many conversations happening simultaneously, the kitchen table too small for everyone, so they ate in shifts and waves, passing dishes and sharing stories, and occasionally arguing about whose memory of events was more accurate. Victoria held her own beautifully, laughing at family jokes she couldn't possibly understand yet, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than polite obligation, never trying to be the center of attention, but also not fading into the background. After dinner, while the adults clustered in the living room with coffee and pie, Lily pulled Victoria aside to show her the photo albums Ruth kept on the bottom shelf of the bookcase. "That's Mom," Lily said, pointing to a picture of Sarah at her wedding, radiant in white lace and genuine joy. "She was really pretty." "She was beautiful," Victoria agreed. "You look like her." "Everyone says that, but I have Daddy's eyes." "You have the best parts of both of them," Victoria said diplomatically. Lily turned the page, revealing photos of Sarah pregnant, then Sarah holding a newborn Lily, then the three of them as a young family, exhausted and happy and utterly in love with each other and the life they were building. "Do you feel weird looking at these?" Lily asked with her characteristic bluntness. "Like knowing Daddy loved her first?" Victoria took a breath, clearly weighing how honest to be. "A little weird," she admitted. "But mostly I feel grateful that she loved him and you so well, that she gave him you, that she helped make him the person I fell in love with." She looked at Lily seriously. "I know I'm not your mom. I'm never going to try to be. But I hope someday you'll let me be someone who loves you and takes care of you and cheers for you at science fairs." "Like a bonus parent?" Lily suggested. "Exactly like that." Lily considered this, then nodded decisively. "I think that would be okay. But you have to promise that if you and Daddy don't work out, you'll still be nice to me. Not like Claire." "Who's Claire?" "Marcus's dad's girlfriend before Jennifer. She was nice when she was dating Uncle Tom, but then when they broke up, she pretended Marcus didn't exist. It made him really sad." Victoria's expression hardened. "I promise you, Lily Cross, that even if your dad and I don't work out, which I don't think will happen, but if it does, I will never pretend you don't exist. You're remarkable, and knowing you has been one of the best parts of falling in love with your dad." Lily threw her arms around Victoria in an impulsive hug that made the woman freeze for just a second before melting into it, holding Lily close and blinking back tears. Daniel watched from the doorway, his own eyes burning, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. This was what he'd been afraid to hope for. His daughter accepting Victoria, his past and his future finding a way to coexist peacefully, the possibility of building something whole from the broken pieces. Ruth appeared beside him, following his gaze. "She's good with her," she said quietly. "She is. Sarah would approve, I think. She always said you deserved someone who challenged you intellectually, someone strong enough to handle Lily's intensity." Ruth paused. "Victoria seems like that person." "She is that person," Daniel said. "Then I'm happy for you, sweetheart. Truly." Ruth patted his arm. "Now go rescue your girlfriend before Lily shows her every embarrassing childhood photo in the album." The day ended with hugs and leftover containers and promises to do it again soon. As they drove home in the darkness, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the emotional intensity and the sugar crash from Ruth's famous pumpkin pie. Victoria held Daniel's hand across the center console, both of them quiet, processing what had felt like a milestone successfully navigated. "Thank you," Victoria said finally, "for including me today, for letting me into your family." "Thank you for handling it with such grace," Daniel replied. "I know it wasn't easy, meeting the family, navigating all that history." "It was worth it." Lily hugged me. Ruth smiled at me, really smiled, not just the polite version. "Your family is special, Daniel. I'm honored to be welcomed into it." They pulled up to Daniel's apartment building. Victoria helped carry the sleeping Lily upstairs, waiting while Daniel tucked her into bed and kissed her forehead. When he emerged from the bedroom, Victoria was standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. "I should go," she said. "Let you rest." "Or you could stay," Daniel suggested. Just to sleep. Wake up together. Have breakfast. Lily would probably enjoy that." Victoria turned, her expression softening. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I want you here. I want you to be part of the morning routine, not just the special occasions." So Victoria stayed, borrowing one of Daniel's shirts to sleep in, settling into the pull-out couch beside him with the comfortable ease of someone who belonged there. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and when Lily found them in the morning and announced that she was making scrambled eggs for everyone, which turned into a small kitchen fire that they all pretended wasn't actually dangerous, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. This was family, messy and imperfect and built from choices rather than just biology. And as Daniel watched Victoria help Lily scrape burned eggs into the trash while they all laughed about their collective cooking incompetence, he knew with absolute certainty that he was ready for the next step. It was time to make this permanent. The burned eggs incident became family legend, retold with increasing embellishment each time as the weeks rolled toward Christmas. Victoria started staying over more frequently, keeping a toothbrush in Daniel's bathroom and a drawer of clothes in his bedroom closet. Lily treated this progression as completely natural, sometimes crawling into bed between them on Sunday mornings to read or play games on Daniel's phone while they pretended to sleep a few minutes longer. It was during one of these lazy Sunday mornings in mid-December that Daniel realized he needed to talk to Lily before he could move forward with the plan crystallizing in his mind. Victoria had left early for a board meeting, kissing them both goodbye and promising to return for dinner. Lily was working on a new project at the kitchen table, something involving pulleys and counterweights that Daniel didn't fully understand but had learned to support with enthusiasm and hardware store trips. "Can we talk about something?" Daniel asked, setting down his coffee and pulling out the chair beside her. Lily looked up, immediately wary in the way children became when adults use that particular tone. "Am I in trouble?" "No, baby. Nothing like that. I just wanted to ask you something important, and I need you to be really honest with me, okay?" "Okay," Lily said slowly, setting down her pencil. Daniel took a breath, suddenly more nervous than he'd been for any job interview or first date. "How would you feel if I asked Victoria to marry me?" Lily blinked, processing this information with her characteristic seriousness. "Like, to marry us?" To be part of our family for real? Yes, exactly like that. She'd be my wife and your stepmom, and we'd probably all live together in a bigger place where you'd have your own room and space for your projects. Would we still see Grandma Ruth? Of course. Ruth is your grandmother. That never changes, no matter who I marry. And would Victoria try to make me call her mom? Daniel's heart clenched. Never. Victoria knows you have a mom. Your mom will always be your mom, even though she's not here anymore. Victoria she'd be Victoria. Someone who loves you and takes care of you, but not a replacement. Lily nodded, her gray eyes thoughtful. Ms. Jennifer calls her stepmom by her first name. They seem happy. They do seem happy, Daniel agreed. But Lily, I need to know, really know, if this is okay with you. Because if it's not, if you need more time or if you're not comfortable, then I'll wait. You're the most important person in my life. Your feelings matter more than anything. Lily was quiet for a long moment, and Daniel forced himself not to fill the silence, to let her work through her thoughts at her own pace. Finally, she looked up at him with an expression that seemed far too mature for 8 years old. Do you love her like you loved Mom? She asked. The question deserved honesty. I love her differently than I loved Mom. Your mom and I grew up together, learned how to be adults together. Victoria and I, we're both already grown up, already know who we are. We're choosing each other with our eyes open, knowing it won't always be easy, but believing it's worth it anyway. He paused. But yes, I love her. Very much. And she makes you happy? She does. And she's nice to me? She is. Then yes, Lily said simply. You should ask her to marry you. But Daddy? Yeah, baby? You should do it romantic, not just like at dinner or something boring, something she'll want to tell people about. Lily grinned, suddenly looking exactly like the 8-year-old she was. And I want to help plan it. Daniel laughed, pulling her into a hug. Deal. We'll plan it together. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in covert operations. Daniel and Lily became co-conspirators, huddling over ring websites after Victoria left in the evenings, debating the merits of different settings and stone sizes. Lily had opinions, strong ones, about what would look good on Victoria's hand, vetoing anything too flashy or too simple, insisting it needed to be elegant but not boring. She runs a company, Lily explained with the authority of someone who'd given this considerable thought. So it can't be too delicate or it'll get in the way when she's typing, but it also can't be too big or people will think she's showing off. When did you become an expert in engagement rings? Daniel asked, amused. I've been doing research, Lily said, showing him a bookmark folder on the tablet she used for school. There are lots of articles about professional women and jewelry choices. I've been reading them at library time. Daniel was simultaneously impressed and slightly concerned about his daughter's research skills, but ultimately grateful for the help. They settled on a platinum band with a princess-cut diamond, elegant and understated, exactly Victoria's style. Daniel ordered it online and had it shipped to the office, intercepting the package before Victoria could see it and hiding it in his desk drawer under a pile of technical documentation that he knew she'd never randomly browse through. The proposal itself required more planning. Lily argued for something public and dramatic, the Seattle Center maybe, or the top of the Space Needle. Daniel wanted something more intimate, more meaningful. They compromised on a plan that would incorporate all three of them, acknowledging that this wasn't just about Daniel and Victoria, but about the family they were building together. The location was obvious once Daniel thought about it. The Hale Industries office, 7th floor, the hallway where Victoria had first fixed his tie and whispered that warning that had turned into a promise. Full circle. Poetic? And private enough that if things went horribly wrong, they wouldn't have an audience beyond building security cameras. The trick was getting Victoria there on a Saturday evening without arousing suspicion. Daniel enlisted Patricia's help, having her send Victoria an urgent email about a server issue that required CEO authorization to resolve. It was plausible enough these things happened, and Victoria was conscientious enough that she wouldn't question coming in on a weekend if the situation demanded it. Saturday arrived with typical Seattle weather, rain that couldn't decide if it wanted to be drizzle or downpour, gray skies that made 4 in the afternoon feel like dusk. Daniel dressed carefully, his best shirt and slacks, the tie Victoria had straightened on that first morning. Lily wore her science fair dress, and the necklace Ruth had given her for her last birthday, looking suddenly older than her 8 years. "You nervous?" Lily asked as they rode the elevator up to the 7th floor. "Terrified," Daniel admitted. "She's going to say yes," Lily said confidently. "She loves you. It's super obvious." "From the mouths of babes," Daniel muttered, but he appreciated the reassurance. They'd arrived an hour early to set up. The plan was simple but required coordination. Daniel had borrowed Lily's project lamp from the science fair and positioned it to illuminate a specific spot in the hallway. He'd printed photos of their first date, the science fair, Thanksgiving at Ruth's, Sunday morning pancakes, and arranged them in a timeline leading from the elevator to that illuminated spot. At the end of the photo trail was a poster board that Lily had decorated with her characteristic attention to detail, containing a message they'd crafted together. The final touch was a chair positioned exactly where Victoria had stood when she'd fixed his tie, with a single envelope resting on the seat. They were putting the last pieces in place when Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Victoria, on my way. Patricia said the server issue is on 7. I'll be there in 15. Daniel, we'll be here. Take your time." Lily bounced on her toes, nervous energy barely contained. "What if she gets here before we're ready?" "We're ready," Daniel assured her, though his own hands were shaking slightly as he checked the setup one final time. "Go wait in the conference room like we planned. I'll text you when it's time." Lily hugged him quickly, fiercely. "Good luck, Daddy. You've got this." Then she disappeared into the conference room, leaving Daniel alone in the hallway with his pounding heart and the ring box in his pocket feeling like it weighed 10 pounds. The elevator chimed at exactly 4:47. Victoria emerged wearing jeans and a sweater, clearly having come from home rather than dressing up for a Saturday server crisis. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she looked tired but alert, already mentally cataloging whatever technical disaster required her presence. She stopped short when she saw the photos on the wall. "Daniel?" she called, confusion evident in her voice. "What's going on? Where's Patricia?" "Patricia's at home with her family," Daniel said, stepping into view. "There's no server crisis." Victoria's expression shifted from confusion to wariness. "Then why?" She looked at the photos again, really seeing them this time. "What is this?" "This is me being romantic," Daniel said, "or trying to be, with help from my daughter who insisted that proposals should be memorable." Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. "Daniel, walk with me," he said gently, gesturing to the photo timeline. "Please." She moved slowly down the hallway, stopping at each photo, her eyes bright with unshed tears. The first date at the restaurant in Fremont, Lily's science fair ribbon, Victoria and Lily laughing over burned eggs, Ruth hugging Victoria goodbye after Thanksgiving. Each image a moment, a building block, evidence of a life being constructed piece by careful piece. At the end of the timeline was Lily's poster board, decorated with drawings of buildings and blueprints and structural diagrams. The message was written in Lily's careful handwriting. "Victoria, my mom was an architect. She taught me that good buildings need strong foundations. You and Daddy are building something strong. I think you should make it permanent. Love, Lily." Below Lily's message, Daniel had added his own note in smaller writing. "This is where it started, where you fixed my tie and warned me not to let my heart rate spike. I didn't listen. I've been falling for you since that moment, and I don't want to stop. Will you marry me?" Victoria was crying now, openly, and when she turned to face Daniel, he was already on one knee, the ring box open in his hands. "I know this is fast by some standards," Daniel said, his voice steady despite his racing pulse. "We've only been dating for a few months, but I'm 34 years old, I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I've already learned the hard way that life is unpredictable, and tomorrow isn't guaranteed, so when I find something real, something worth holding on to, I don't want to waste time being cautious." "Daniel?" Victoria whispered, but he pressed on, needing to say it all. "You make me brave. You make me believe in second chances. You love my daughter like she's already yours, and you honor my past while building toward our future. You're brilliant and capable and sometimes slightly terrifying in your competence, and I love you more than I knew I could love anyone after Sarah died." He took a shaky breath. "So Victoria Hale, will you marry me?" Will you build this life with us, messy and imperfect, and absolutely worth it? Victoria was nodding before he finished speaking, dropping to her knees in front of him, her hands cupping his face. Yes. Yes, of course, yes. I love you. I love Lily. I love the family we're building. Yes. Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and then they were kissing, holding each other in the middle of the hallway where it had all started, both of them crying and laughing simultaneously. The conference room door burst open and Lily came running out, unable to wait any longer. Did she say yes? She said yes, right? I saw you kissing. Victoria pulled back from Daniel just enough to open her arms, and Lily crashed into them both, the three of them kneeling together on the office carpet in a tangle of limbs and emotions. I said yes, Victoria confirmed, showing Lily the ring. How could I say anything else after you built such a convincing case? I told Daddy it needed to be romantic, Lily said proudly. Was it romantic? It was perfect, Victoria said, looking at Daniel over Lily's head with an expression so full of love it made his chest ache. Absolutely perfect. They stayed there for a long moment, the three of them holding each other in the fluorescent-lit hallway, cementing the foundation of what they were building. Eventually, Lily pulled back with a practical question that was so characteristically her that both adults laughed. So when's the wedding? Because if it's in the summer, I could build something cool for the decorations. Like maybe a mechanical flower arrangement that rotates or lights up, or let's get through Christmas first, Victoria said, ruffling Lily's hair. Then we'll plan the wedding together, all three of us. Can I be the flower girl? Lily asked. You can be whatever you want to be, Daniel said. This is our wedding, our family. We make the rules. They took a selfie in the hallway, Victoria's ring catching the light from Lily's project lamp, all three of them grinning like fools. Daniel sent it to Ruth with a simple message. She said yes, hope you're ready for a wedding. Ruth's response came within seconds. About time. Congratulations, all three of you. Sarah would be so happy. The mention of Sarah should have stung, should have complicated the moment, but instead, it felt right, like they had her blessing, her approval for what they were building. Daniel showed the message to Victoria, watching her read it with tears streaming down her face. I'm going to do right by her memory, Victoria said quietly. By Sarah, by what she started. I promise you that. I know, Daniel said. That's why I'm marrying you. They celebrated that evening at Daniel's apartment with takeout pizza and sparkling cider for Lily, Victoria calling her father from the pull-out couch to share the news while Daniel and Lily cleaned up dinner. The conversation was brief. Victoria's relationship with her father was cordial but distant, but when she hung up, she looked lighter somehow, like she'd checked off a necessary obligation. He's happy for us, she reported, in his way. He doesn't really do emotions, but he said you sound like a good man and Lily sounds delightful, and he'd like to meet us both eventually. Eventually being the operative word, Daniel guessed. He's stationed in Germany right now. Probably won't make it back for the wedding unless we wait 2 years, which I'm not particularly interested in doing. Victoria pulled him down beside her on the couch. Is that terrible? That I don't really care if my father attends my wedding? It's honest, Daniel said. Family is complicated. You don't owe anyone a relationship just because of biology. That's very evolved of you. I have an 8-year-old philosopher who teaches me things. They spent the rest of the evening planning logistics with the kind of practical enthusiasm that characterized their relationship. They agreed on a timeline. Spring wedding, maybe April, when the weather was unpredictable but sometimes beautiful. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Nothing elaborate or expensive, just meaningful. They discussed living arrangements, agreeing that Daniel and Lily would move into Victoria's condo in February to give everyone time to adjust before the wedding. They talked about name changes, deciding that Lily would keep Cross, but could hyphenate if she wanted when she was older, and Victoria would become Victoria Cross professionally while keeping Hale for the company. This is very romantic, Victoria said dryly as they debated the merits of different health insurance plans. Discussing beneficiary designations on the night of our engagement. Romance is overrated, Daniel countered. Partnership is what lasts. We can have both, Victoria said, kissing him softly. Romance and partnership, passion and practicality. That's the whole point of us, isn't it? We work because we balance each other. She was right. They did balance each other, Daniel's caution and Victoria's boldness, her strategic planning and his emotional intelligence, his experience with parenthood and her business acumen. Together, they were building something stronger than either could construct alone. The weeks between engagement and Christmas passed in a blur of planning and celebration and adjustment. They told the office on Monday, Patricia squealing with delight and immediately volunteering to help with wedding coordination. Marcus won another $20 off his ongoing bet about their relationship timeline. The team threw an impromptu engagement party in the break room with grocery store cake and genuine affection. Daniel's mother, who lived in Florida and saw Lily twice a year via video call, sent a card with a generous check and the comment that she was glad he'd finally found someone to settle down with, which made Victoria raise her eyebrows, and Daniel explained his mother's complicated relationship with grandparenthood. Ruth invited them for dinner and toasted their engagement with wine and tears and stories about Sarah and Daniel's wedding that should have been painful but somehow felt like a gift, a passing of the torch from one marriage to another. They shopped for furniture together, Victoria insisting that Lily needed to choose her own bedroom set for the new living arrangement. Lily selected a loft bed with a desk underneath and multiple shelves for her building projects, declaring it the best furniture she'd ever owned. They painted her new room together one Saturday, all three of them covered in pale blue paint by the end, laughing at their collective incompetence with home improvement. Victoria took Lily dress shopping for the wedding, just the two of them, giving Daniel an afternoon alone to finish some freelance work he'd committed to before the engagement. When they returned, Lily was clutching a garment bag and talking a mile a minute about tulle and sequins and the difference between flower girl dresses and junior bridesmaid dresses, which apparently was significant. "We found the perfect dress," Victoria reported, looking exhausted but happy. "Though I think we tried on every dress in Seattle first." I wanted to be sure," Lily said with great dignity. "This is an important wedding." Christmas arrived with its usual chaos, this time complicated by the logistics of a newly blended family. They spent Christmas Eve at Ruth's with extended family, Victoria now fully integrated into the traditions and inside jokes. Christmas morning was at Victoria's condo, soon to be their condo, with presents opened in pajamas and pancakes that only slightly burned. Daniel's mother video called from Florida, meeting Victoria for the first time and pronouncing her very put together, which was probably the highest compliment in his mother's vocabulary. The gift exchange was simple but meaningful. Daniel gave Victoria a leather portfolio embossed with her new initials, VMC, Victoria Margaret Cross. Victoria gave Daniel a new laptop for his freelance work and a framed photo of the three of them from the engagement night. Lily gave them both handmade cards with elaborate drawings of their future house, complete with a workshop for her projects and an office for Victoria and a room for Dad that wasn't a pull-out couch. "This is the family I always wanted," Victoria said quietly after Lily had gone to bed, the two of them curled together on the couch surrounded by wrapping paper debris. "The noise and the chaos and the feeling like I belong somewhere. Thank you for letting me in." "Thank you for choosing us," Daniel countered, "for seeing past the complications and the baggage and deciding we were worth it." "You were always worth it," Victoria said. "From the first moment. I just had to be patient enough to let you see it too." The new year arrived with its traditional promise of fresh starts and new beginnings. Daniel and Lily moved into Victoria's condo on February 1st, a process that involved far more stuff than seemed possible for two people living in a one-bedroom apartment. The pull-out couch was donated to charity, along with most of their mismatched furniture. Daniel kept Sarah's photos, her jewelry for Lily, a few personal items that mattered. Everything else was left behind, physical manifestation of moving forward while honoring the past. Lily adapted to the new space with the resilience of childhood, claiming her room and immediately filling it with projects in various states of completion. She loved having her own bathroom, her own space, the ability to spread out without worrying about taking up too much room in their cramped apartment. She loved that Victoria's building had a gym and a rooftop deck, and other kids to play with in the common areas. Daniel adapted more slowly, still sometimes expecting to wake up on a pull-out couch, still feeling like he was playing house in someone else's space. Victoria was patient with his adjustment, giving him drawers and closet space, insisting he rearrange furniture if he wanted, treating it as their home rather than her home that he was moving into. I feel like I should contribute more to the mortgage, Daniel said one evening in late February, watching Victoria sort through wedding invitation samples. This place is worth 3 times what I could afford, and You're contributing by being here, Victoria interrupted. By being my partner. By bringing Lily into my life. This isn't a transaction, Daniel. We're building a life together, which means sometimes I'll contribute more financially, and sometimes you'll contribute more in other ways. It evens out over time. That's very trusting of you. It's called a partnership, Victoria said, showing him 2 invitation designs. Which one do you like better? They chose the simpler design, cream cardstock with elegant script, nothing ostentatious or overdone. The guest list was manageable. 75 people, mostly Victoria's business contacts, and Daniel's extended family, Ruth and her people, a handful of close friends. They booked a small venue in Ballard, a restored warehouse with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows, perfect for an April ceremony. The wedding planning became a family project. Lily had opinions about everything: the flowers, the cake flavors, the music selection for the ceremony. Victoria indulged her enthusiasms while gently steering her away from ideas that were too elaborate or expensive. Daniel served as mediator, translating between his daughter's creative visions and his fiancé's practical constraints. I think I'm supposed to be planning this with my mother, Victoria said one evening after a particularly intense debate about whether the centerpieces should include working gear systems as a nod to Lily's engineering interests. Not with my future stepdaughter. Are you complaining? Daniel asked. Not even a little bit, Victoria admitted. This is better. More us. More real. March brought final wedding preparations and the kind of pre-ceremony jitters that Daniel remembered from his first wedding, though this time tempered with the certainty of someone who knew exactly what he was choosing. He wasn't a nervous 24-year-old anymore, wasn't diving into marriage with optimistic naivety. He was a man who'd loved and lost and learned to love again, who understood that commitment was a choice renewed daily, that happily ever after required work and compromise, and the willingness to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. The night before the wedding, Daniel stayed at Ruth's house following the traditional separation. Lily stayed with Victoria, the 2 of them having a girls' night that apparently involved face masks and wedding day preparation, and secrets Daniel wasn't privy to. He lay awake in Ruth's guest room, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Sarah and Victoria, and the strange path that had led him here. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Victoria, are you awake? Daniel, can't sleep. Tomorrow feels important. Victoria, it is important. We're becoming a family. Legally, officially, permanently. Daniel, having second thoughts? Victoria, not even for a second. You? Daniel, no. Just thinking about how lucky I am, how improbable this all is. 6 months ago, I was barely surviving, and now I'm marrying the woman I love and building a life I actually want to live. Victoria, we're both lucky. Lily just told me she can't wait for tomorrow because then we'll be a real family. I cried. Daniel, she has that effect on people. Victoria, get some sleep. I love you. See you at the altar. Daniel, I love you too. See you tomorrow. Daniel set down his phone, his heart full, his mind finally quiet. Tomorrow, he would marry Victoria Hale. Tomorrow, they would become a family in the eyes of the law and society and everyone who mattered. Tomorrow was the beginning of their forever. And for the first time since Sarah died, Daniel believed in forever again. The April morning arrived with the kind of perfect weather that Seattle rarely delivered. Clear skies, temperature in the mid-60s, the promise of sunshine that would last through the evening. Daniel woke at Ruth's house to the smell of coffee and the sound of his former mother-in-law humming in the kitchen. And for a moment, he was transported back 7 years to another wedding morning, another life. Ruth appeared in the doorway with a mug of coffee, reading his expression with the intuition of someone who'd known him through his best and worst moments. She'd be happy for you today, Ruth said simply, sitting on the edge of the guest bed. Sarah, I know you're thinking about her. It's okay to think about her. I dreamed about her last night, Daniel admitted, accepting the coffee. Not a sad dream. She was just there, telling me I was doing the right thing, that Victoria was good for me and Lily. It felt real. Maybe it was real, Ruth said. Or maybe your subconscious is giving you permission to be happy. Either way, the message is the same. Move forward, build your life. Love the family you have now while honoring the family you lost. Daniel's throat tightened. Thank you for being here, for supporting this even though it can't be easy watching me marry someone else. It's not easy, Ruth agreed, but it's right, and I've had 6 years to grieve my daughter. Now I get to celebrate my granddaughter getting a mother figure who adores her, and my son-in-law finding happiness again. That's a gift, Daniel. Don't diminish it by feeling guilty. They sat together in comfortable silence, drinking coffee as morning light filled the guest room, and Daniel felt something settle inside him, the last piece of grief finding its proper place, no longer controlling his present but integrated into his history, acknowledged and honored but not defining. The ceremony wasn't until 4, which left an entire day to fill with nervous energy and last-minute preparations. Daniel showered and dressed in his wedding suit, charcoal gray, similar to the one he'd worn for his interview, but tailored now, fitting properly, making him look like a man who had his life together rather than one barely surviving. Marcus arrived at 10 to serve as best man and general emotional support, bringing bagels and the kind of crude jokes about wedding nights that Daniel pretended to find annoying but secretly appreciated for the normalcy. "You ready for this?" Marcus asked as they ate breakfast in Ruth's kitchen. "The whole commitment thing again? The mingling of finances and closet space and having to negotiate every major decision?" "I'm ready for Victoria," Daniel said. "The rest is just logistics." "That's disgustingly healthy," Marcus said. "I'm proud of you, man. After Sarah, I wasn't sure you'd ever—" He paused, suddenly awkward. "I'm just glad you found her, found this. You deserve it." Meanwhile, across town in the bridal suite of the Ballard Warehouse venue, Victoria was experiencing her own version of pre-wedding jitters. Patricia had arrived early with mimosas and emotional support, helping Victoria into her dress, a simple sheath in champagne silk, elegant without being ostentatious, exactly her style. Lily was there too, already dressed in her junior bridesmaid gown of pale blue tulle, her hair arranged in an elaborate updo that had required professional help and would probably last approximately 20 minutes before she started pulling out pins. "You look beautiful," Lily said seriously, watching Victoria examine herself in the full-length mirror. "Like a princess, but the kind who runs a company." Victoria laughed, the sound slightly shaky with nerves. "That's exactly the aesthetic I was going for." "Are you scared?" Lily asked with her characteristic directness. "Terrified," Victoria admitted. "Not about marrying your dad. That part I'm sure about. But about doing this right. Being a good stepmother. Not messing up the family you and your dad have built." Lily considered this, then walked over and took Victoria's hand. "You won't mess it up. You're already part of our family. This is just making it official." Patricia dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "I'm going to ruin my makeup before the ceremony even starts. You two are killing me." The hours until 4 o'clock passed in a strange time dilation, simultaneously crawling and racing. Victoria posed for photos with Lily and Patricia, her hands shaking slightly as she held her bouquet of white roses and eucalyptus. She checked her phone obsessively for messages from Daniel, even though they'd agreed to maintain radio silence until the ceremony. She paced the bridal suite, practiced her vows one more time, and tried to ignore the voice in her head whispering that she didn't deserve this much happiness. At the same time, Daniel was experiencing his own version of the same anxiety. He stood in the groom's suite with Marcus and Tom, Sarah's brother, who'd insisted on being there despite the potential awkwardness of attending his dead sister's widower's wedding. Tom had pulled Daniel aside earlier with a hug and the simple statement that Sarah would have liked Victoria, which felt like the blessing Daniel hadn't known he needed. 5 minutes, the wedding coordinator announced, poking her head into the room. Everyone to their positions. The venue looked exactly as they'd planned. Exposed brick walls softened with string lights, wooden chairs arranged in neat rows, a simple arch decorated with greenery and white flowers. 75 guests filled the space with comfortable capacity, the room buzzing with conversation and anticipation. Daniel took his position at the altar with Marcus beside him, his heart hammering so hard he was certain everyone could hear it. The music changed. The guests quieted. Patricia walked down the aisle first, followed by Tom escorting Ruth, a gesture that acknowledged the complicated family dynamics while honoring Sarah's memory. Then Lily appeared at the end of the aisle, walking slowly and carefully, her role as junior bridesmaid taken with utmost seriousness. She carried a small bouquet and a basket of rose petals she'd insisted on scattering despite Victoria's concerns about tripping hazards. When Lily reached the altar, she looked up at Daniel and whispered loudly enough for the first 3 rows to hear, "She looks really pretty, Dad. Like, really, really pretty." The guests laughed, the moment of levity breaking the formal tension. Then the music swelled into the processional, and Victoria appeared. She walked alone down the aisle, having no father to give her away, and preferring the symbolism of coming to this marriage of her own volition, making her own choice. The champagne silk of her dress caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows, and she carried her bouquet with steady hands despite the tears streaming down her face. Her eyes were locked on Daniel's, and the expression on her face was so full of love and certainty that Daniel felt his own eyes burning. When she reached the altar, Victoria handed her bouquet to Patricia and took both of Daniel's hands, squeezing gently as if to say, "I'm here. We're doing this. We're going to be okay." The officiant began the ceremony, a friend of Victoria's from law school who'd been ordained specifically for this occasion. The traditional words washed over them, "Dearly beloved, gathered here today, holy matrimony." But Daniel was only half listening, too focused on Victoria's face, on the reality that this was actually happening, that in a few minutes she would be his wife. "Daniel and Victoria have chosen to share their own vows," the officiant said. "Daniel, would you like to begin?" Daniel took a breath, pulling out the note card where he'd written his vows in careful handwriting. But when he looked at Victoria, at the woman who'd taken a chance on a desperate single father in a crooked tie, the prepared words felt inadequate. He set down the card. "I came to your office 6 months ago looking for stability," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "A job with predictable hours and health insurance and the ability to be home for dinner. I got all of that. But I also got something I wasn't looking for and didn't think I deserved. A second chance at love. A partner who sees me at my most anxious and stressed and imperfect, and chooses me anyway. A woman brave enough to love not just me, but my daughter, my history, my whole complicated life." He paused, swallowing hard. "You make me believe in forevers again, Victoria. And I promise to spend the rest of my life earning the gift of being your husband. I promise to support your ambitions, to share the domestic labor equally, to communicate even when it's hard. I promise to love Lily alongside you, to build a family that honors the past while creating new traditions. I promise to fix your tie when it's crooked, to bring you coffee during deadlines, and to never stop being grateful that you said yes." Victoria was openly crying now, not bothering to wipe away the tears. "That's not fair," she said shakily. "You're making me look bad with your perfect vows." The guests laughed through their own tears. Victoria took a moment to compose herself, then began. "I've built a company from nothing," she said. "I've negotiated million-dollar contracts and survived market crashes and managed crises that should have destroyed everything I'd created. I thought I was good at building things. But then I met you, and I realized I'd never built anything that actually mattered. A business can succeed or fail, but a family, a real family, chosen and intentional, and built on love rather than biology, that's legacy. That's permanent." She squeezed Daniel's hands. "You and Lily have taught me what it means to truly come home. Not to a place, but to people who know me completely and love me anyway. I promise to be a partner worthy of your trust. I promise to love Lily as if she were my own, while respecting that she has a mother whose memory deserves honor. I promise to never take for granted the extraordinary gift of being invited into your family. And I promise that when I fix your tie, it's not about control or perfectionism. It's about taking care of you in small ways, every single day, for the rest of our lives." There wasn't a dry eye in the venue. Even Marcus was sniffling, trying to be subtle about it and failing completely. The officiant continued through the traditional elements, the rings, the pronouncements, the legal declarations. Lily stepped forward when prompted, carrying the rings on a small pillow she'd decorated herself with fabric paint and sequins. She handed them over with great solemnity, then whispered to Victoria, "Don't drop it. That would be embarrassing." Victoria laughed through her tears. "I won't drop it." The rings were exchanged, Daniel's hands shaking slightly as he slipped the band onto Victoria's finger beside her engagement ring. Victoria's hands were steady as she placed his ring, a simple platinum band that matched hers, onto his hand with the kind of careful precision she brought to everything important. "By the power vested in me by the state of Washington," the officiant said, "I now pronounce you married. You may kiss your spouse." Daniel pulled Victoria close, kissing her with all the pent-up emotion of the day, the months of building toward this moment, the absolute certainty that this was right. The guests erupted in applause and cheers, Lily clapping hardest of all, and when they finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning, Victoria whispered against his mouth, "We did it. We're actually married." "We're actually married," Daniel confirmed, and the reality of it hit him like a wave. This brilliant, fierce woman was his wife. This was his family. This was his life now. The reception flowed seamlessly from ceremony, the chairs rearranged to create space for a dance floor, cocktails served, toasts delivered. Marcus gave a best man speech that was equal parts heartfelt and inappropriate, earning laughter and groans in appropriate measure. Patricia spoke about watching Victoria and Daniel fall in love at the office, about how Victoria had been happier in the past 6 months than in all the years Patricia had known her. Ruth stood and raised her glass with a toast that acknowledged both Sarah and Victoria, honoring the past while celebrating the present, and by the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Lily insisted on giving her own toast, standing on a chair to be seen over the adult heads. "I used to think families had to look a certain way," she said with the gravity of someone much older. "A mom and a dad and kids. But now I know families are whoever loves you and takes care of you and shows up when you need them. Victoria showed up. She keeps showing up, and that makes her family." She raised her glass of sparkling cider. "To Victoria and Dad, may you always show up for each other." The adults raised their glasses through tears, drinking to this 8-year-old's wisdom, to the family they'd all become through choice rather than biology. The party continued through the evening. Daniel and Victoria shared their first dance to a song they'd agonized over for weeks, ultimately choosing something neither had any particular connection to because the lyrics felt right, something about building homes and choosing love and finding your person. Lily danced with both of them, standing on Daniel's feet and then Victoria's, giggling as they spun her around the floor. As the night wore on and the dancing got more enthusiastic and the cake was cut and the bouquet thrown, Daniel found himself standing at the edge of the dance floor with Victoria, watching their guests celebrate and feeling overwhelmed by the impossible luck of it all. "What are you thinking?" Victoria asked, her head resting on his shoulder. "That 6 months ago I was barely surviving," Daniel said. "Single father, unemployed, terrified I was failing my daughter and myself. And now I'm married to an incredible woman, I have a job I love, Lily is thriving, and I actually believe things will be okay. Better than okay." "Things will be okay," Victoria confirmed. "We'll make sure of it. Together." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other while their family and friends danced around them, and Daniel thought about the journey that had brought them here, the grief and the healing, the taking chances and the choosing to be brave, the slow building of trust and love and family. It hadn't been easy, it hadn't been simple, but it had been worth every moment of uncertainty and fear. The reception ended around 11, guests departing with hugs and well wishes and promises to see the newlyweds when they returned from their honeymoon. Lily left with Ruth, who'd volunteered to keep her for the week, while Daniel and Victoria took a brief trip to the San Juan Islands. The goodbyes were tearful and prolonged, Lily making both adults promise to bring her a present and to take lots of pictures and to not be too mushy while she was gone. "We'll try to contain our mushiness," Victoria promised. "But no guarantees," Daniel added, making Lily giggle. Finally, it was just the two of them, standing in the parking lot of the venue as the catering staff cleaned up inside. Victoria had changed into jeans and a sweater, Daniel into casual clothes, both of them exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. "We're married," Victoria said, like she was still processing the reality. "We're married," Daniel agreed. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying and perfect," Victoria said, "like everything important." They drove to Victoria's condo, their condo now, legally and actually, and spent their wedding night doing absolutely nothing romantic or exciting. They were too tired for romance, too emotionally wrung out for grand gestures. Instead, they changed into pajamas, ordered pizza because neither had eaten properly at the reception, and collapsed on the couch with Netflix playing something neither actually watched. "This is perfect," Victoria said, her feet in Daniel's lap, a slice of pizza in her hand. Exactly what I needed. No regrets about the lack of wedding night passion? Daniel teased. We have the rest of our lives for passion, Victoria said. Tonight, I just want to be married to you, to exist in this space where we're officially, legally, permanently a family. I can do that, Daniel said, pulling her closer. They fell asleep on the couch, still in their pajamas, Netflix asking if they were still watching, and it was the most perfect wedding night Daniel could have imagined. The honeymoon was brief but restorative. 4 days on San Juan Island, hiking and whale watching and eating at small restaurants, existing as just Daniel and Victoria without the roles of parent or CEO or employee. They talked about everything and nothing, made plans for the future, discussed practical matters like combining finances and updating legal documents and whether they should get a dog. They made love like newlyweds, with enthusiasm and some awkwardness and the kind of laughter that came from knowing each other well enough to find the imperfections endearing rather than embarrassing. On their last evening, sitting on the beach watching the sunset, Victoria brought up the question they'd been dancing around. Do you want more kids? She asked. I know you have Lily, and she's amazing, but do you want to expand the family? Daniel was quiet for a moment, genuinely considering. Do you want kids? Your own biological children? I don't know, Victoria admitted. I'm 38. If we're going to do it, we can't wait forever. But I also feel like I already have a child, Lily. And I don't want her to feel replaced or less important if we have a baby. Lily would never feel replaced, Daniel said. She'd probably try to teach the baby engineering before it could walk. He took Victoria's hand. But I think we should talk to her about it, make it a family decision. Because if we do this, we're all in it together. That's very evolved of you, Victoria said, echoing a phrase from months ago. I learned from my 8-year-old philosopher, Daniel replied. They returned from the honeymoon to find Lily bursting with energy and stories about her week with Ruth. She'd apparently spent the time building an elaborate Rube Goldberg machine in Ruth's basement, much to Ruth's patient tolerance, and was eager to show them photos and explain the mechanics in exhausting detail. Did you have fun being married? Lily asked over dinner their first night back. We did, Victoria said, though mostly we just missed you. That's nice, Lily said pragmatically. But you're supposed to have alone time. That's what Ms. Jennifer says her dad and stepmom need. Time to remember they like each other without kids around. We definitely like each other, Daniel confirmed, but we also definitely like you. That weekend, they sat down as a family to have the conversation about potentially expanding. Daniel and Victoria had discussed how to approach it, deciding on complete honesty rather than trying to manage Lily's reaction. We wanted to talk to you about something, Victoria began, all three of them sitting on the living room floor like a council of war. Your dad and I have been talking about maybe someday having a baby. Not right away, but eventually. And we wanted to know how you'd feel about that. Lily's eyes went wide. A baby? Like an actual tiny human baby? That's generally how it works, Daniel said. Would it be my brother or sister? Lily asked. It would be your half-sibling, technically, Victoria explained. You'd share a dad but have different moms. But yes, it would be your brother or sister. Lily processed this with her characteristic seriousness, her face cycling through various emotions. Surprise, consideration, what looked like calculation. Finally, she spoke. Would you love the baby more than me? She asked quietly. Because it would be both of yours? Victoria's heart broke visibly. She pulled Lily into her lap, holding her close. Never, not ever. Lily, you are my daughter in every way that matters. A baby wouldn't change that. It would just mean we have more love to share, not less for you. Your mom and I talked about having more kids, Daniel added, before she died. She wanted you to have siblings, and if we do this, it would be honoring that dream while also building our new family. But only if you're comfortable with it. Your feelings matter most. Lily was quiet for a long moment, tucked against Victoria's chest, thinking. Can I have some time to think about it? She asked finally. It's a big decision. Of course, Victoria said. Take all the time you need. This isn't happening tomorrow or next month. We're just starting to think about it. Okay, Lily said. I'll think about it and let you know. She returned to her Legos, the conversation apparently over for now, leaving Daniel and Victoria to exchange glances over her head, impressed by her maturity, nervous about her answer, grateful for her willingness to engage honestly. 3 days later, Lily announced her decision over breakfast. "I think you should have a baby," she said, as casually as if she were requesting cereal. "But only if you promise that I can teach it about engineering and that you won't get mad when I inevitably drop it because babies are very slippery." "We promise not to get mad about inevitable dropping," Victoria said solemnly, trying not to laugh. "And you have to let me help pick the name," Lily continued, "because I have very good ideas about names." "Deal," Daniel said. "Then okay," Lily said. "You can have a baby. But not until after my birthday because I want my birthday party to be all about me." "Your birthday isn't until September," Victoria pointed out. "Exactly," Lily said. "So you have time to plan." And just like that, the decision was made. Not rushed, not without consideration, but with the same deliberate intentionality that characterized everything about their family. Careful, consensual, built on love and communication, and the belief that more love didn't diminish what already existed. The years that followed were full in the way that lives built with intention and care tend to be. Not perfect. There were arguments about money and parenting styles, stresses about work-life balance, moments when the blending of families felt more complicated than anyone wanted to acknowledge. But there was also joy, abundance, the daily miracle of choosing each other again and again. Lily started middle school and discovered a passion for robotics, joining a team that competed nationally and winning awards that she displayed in her workshop with appropriate pride. She called Victoria V most of the time, sometimes Mom when she forgot to be careful about the distinction, and Victoria never corrected her, understanding that Lily would define their relationship in her own time and way. Daniel thrived at Hale Industries, eventually promoted to principal architect with a team of his own, his work on healthcare systems cited in industry publications and at conferences. He and Victoria learned to navigate the complexity of being married while working at the same company, setting boundaries about work talk at home, and maintaining their professional reputations through scrupulous fairness and transparent communication. Victoria continued to build her company, now with the kind of work-life balance she'd never managed before marriage, leaving the office at reasonable hours and delegating more to her leadership team. She learned to cook, badly but enthusiastically, and hosted dinner parties where she warned guests in advance about her culinary limitations. She joined Lily at robotics competitions, learning the terminology and the politics, becoming as invested in Lily's victories as Lily herself. 15 months after the wedding, Victoria became pregnant. The pregnancy was complicated. She was nearly 40, considered high risk, required more monitoring than either of them liked, but also joyful, the whole family involved in preparing for the new arrival. Lily painted the nursery and assembled the crib with Daniel's help, and read parenting books with the same intensity she brought to engineering manuals, declaring herself fully prepared to be the best big sister in history. The baby arrived on a rainy March evening, a boy they named Owen Daniel Cross, healthy and loud and immediately beloved. Lily held him in the hospital with careful hands and proclaimed him acceptable for a baby, which was high praise from an 11-year-old. Ruth cried and took approximately 1,000 photos. Daniel stood beside Victoria's hospital bed, holding his wife's hand and his son, and felt the strange completeness of a life rebuilt from fragments into something whole and beautiful. Owen grew from infant to toddler to preschooler, a happy child who adored his big sister and followed her everywhere, trying to help with her projects and mostly just creating adorable chaos. Lily taught him to build with blocks and read him stories about engineers and scientists, cultivating in him the same love of making things she'd inherited from Sarah. The family moved to a larger house when Owen was 2, a craftsman in Ballard with a basement workshop for Lily and a yard big enough for Owen to run in. They kept Sarah's photos displayed prominently, talked about her with Owen when he was old enough to ask questions, made sure Lily never felt like her history was being erased by the new family they'd built. Ruth became Grandma Ruth to Owen too, treating both grandchildren with equal devotion, and if she sometimes looked at Owen and saw echoes of the daughter she'd lost in the grandson she'd gained, she kept those thoughts private, grateful for the complicated gift of continued family. The years passed. Lily graduated from middle school, then high school, accepted to MIT for engineering with scholarships that made Daniel cry with pride. Owen started elementary school, proving to be as curious and energetic as his sister, but with his own distinct personality. More social, less intense, equally brilliant in different ways. Daniel and Victoria celebrated their 5th anniversary, then their 10th, marking the passage of time with the same deliberate gratitude they'd brought to everything else. They renewed their vows on their 10th anniversary, a small ceremony in the backyard of their house with just family present, Lily and Owen both serving as attendants, Ruth offering the blessing, their family complete and complicated and exactly right. And one November afternoon, nearly 11 years after that first interview, Daniel found himself standing in the same hallway where it had all started. He'd come to the office to meet Victoria for lunch, something they did occasionally when their schedules aligned. The 7th floor looked different now. New carpet, updated furniture, different faces at the desks, but the bones were the same, the windows overlooking the city, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Victoria emerged from the elevator at exactly 12:30, punctual as always, dressed in a navy suit that had probably cost more than Daniel's first car. Her hair was shorter now, streaked with silver she refused to hide, her face showing the lines of a life well lived. She saw him waiting and smiled, that same smile that had first made his heart stutter in this hallway years ago. "Hi," she said, reaching up to adjust his tie even though it was perfectly straight. "You're early." "I wanted to stand here for a minute," Daniel admitted. "Where it all started, remember?" "I remember," Victoria said softly. "I fixed your tie. You looked terrified. I thought you were attractive and completely wrong for the position." "I was wrong for the position," Daniel said. "I was desperate and underqualified and barely holding it together." "You were exactly right," Victoria corrected. "You just didn't know it yet. Neither of us did." They stood together in the hallway, married 11 years, parents to 2 children, partners in every sense of the word. Daniel pulled Victoria close, breathing in her perfume, still cedar and bergamot after all this time, and marveled at the journey that had brought them from that first moment to this one. "I shouldn't be touching you like this," Victoria murmured against his collar, echoing her words from a decade ago, her eyes bright with memories and love. "You're my wife," Daniel replied, the same wonder in his voice as if saying it for the first time. "You can touch me however you want." "That's very forward of you, Mr. Cross." "I learned from the CEO," Daniel said. "She taught me to be brave." Victoria laughed, pulling back to look at his face. "How did we get so lucky?" "We chose each other," Daniel said simply, "and kept choosing each other every day, through the hard parts and the easy parts. We built this." "We did," Victoria agreed. "We really did." They left the building hand in hand, walking out into the November afternoon to meet Lily for lunch at the cafe by Green Lake, where they'd spent so many Saturday mornings in those early days. Owen was at school, safe and happy, and Lily had a break between classes at the University of Washington, where she'd transferred after 2 years at MIT, deciding she wanted to be closer to family after all. The cafe was crowded with the usual weekend rush, but they found a table by the window, Lily already waiting with her laptop open and 3 coffees ordered. She looked up when they approached, 20 years old now and so completely herself. Sarah's curls and Daniel's eyes and Victoria's confidence, a combination of everything that had made her and everything she'd chosen to become. "You're late," she said, though her smile belied any real criticism. "I ordered your usuals." "We stopped at the office," Victoria explained. "Nostalgia detour." "Gross," Lily said cheerfully. "You two are so mushy." "You love that we're mushy," Daniel countered, settling into his chair and accepting his coffee. "I tolerate that you're mushy," Lily corrected. "There's a difference." She closed her laptop. "But since you're here and being nostalgic, can I ask you something?" "Anything," Victoria said. "Do you ever regret it? How fast you moved? Getting married after only dating a few months? Having Owen so quickly after? Building a family at breakneck speed?" Daniel and Victoria exchanged glances, a full conversation happening in that look. Shared memories, shared struggles, shared triumphs. "Not once," Daniel said firmly. "When you've already lost everything, when you know how fragile life is, you don't waste time being cautious. We moved fast because we were certain, and that certainty was never wrong. Not even when things were hard, Lily pressed. When Owen was colicky and you were both exhausted? When I was being a nightmare teenager? When work stress and family stress collided? Especially not then, Victoria said, because we had each other. We built something strong enough to weather the hard parts. That's what marriage is, Lily. It's not about never fighting or never struggling. It's about choosing to stay even when things are difficult, about building a foundation that holds. Like engineering, Lily said thoughtfully. You need strong foundations or the whole structure collapses. Exactly like engineering, Daniel agreed. Your mom taught me that. Both of your moms, actually. They spent the rest of lunch talking about Lily's classes and her latest robotics project and her tentative plans for after graduation. When they finally stood to leave, Lily hugged them both tightly, holding on a moment longer than usual. Thank you, she said quietly, for building something strong enough to hold all of us, for making a family I never have to question or doubt, for being exactly what we needed even when none of us knew what that was. Thank you for giving us a chance, Victoria said, her voice thick with emotion. For letting me into your life. For making me a mother. For making us a family, Daniel added. They walked together to the parking lot, the three of them side by side, and Daniel thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that crooked tie in a corporate hallway to this moment of absolute certainty and belonging. It hadn't been the path he'd expected. It hadn't been simple or straightforward or without pain, but it had been worth every uncertain step, every moment of fear, every risk taken in the name of love. That evening, after Owen was asleep and Lily had returned to campus and the house was quiet, Daniel and Victoria stood together on their back porch, watching the stars emerge in the clearing sky. Victoria leaned against him, his arms wrapped around her, both of them comfortable in the silence they'd learned to share. Do you remember what you said to me? Victoria asked. That first night we danced at the Halloween party? I said a lot of things, Daniel replied. Most of them probably inappropriate for a boss-employee relationship. You said we both knew it wasn't just dancing, Victoria reminded him, that it was something more, something that would change everything. I was right, Daniel said simply. You were right, Victoria agreed. It changed everything, changed me, changed us, changed the whole trajectory of our lives. Any regrets? Not even one, Victoria said, turning in his arms to face him. You gave me a family, Daniel, a real one, the kind I always wanted but never thought I'd have. You gave me Lily and Owen and holiday traditions and school plays and messy kitchens and all the beautiful chaos that comes with actually living instead of just existing. You gave me a second chance, Daniel countered, at love, at hope, at believing in forevers. You saw me at my most broken and decided I was worth fixing or worth loving exactly as I was, broken pieces included. We fixed each other, Victoria said. That's the whole point. We built something new from what was broken, something stronger for having been repaired. They kissed there on the porch, married 11 years and still discovering new ways to love each other, still building and rebuilding the life they'd chosen. And when they finally went inside, checking locks and turning off lights and climbing the stairs to the bedroom they shared, Daniel felt the profound gratitude of someone who'd been given an unexpected gift and had the wisdom to treasure it. This was his life now, messy and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. A wife who challenged and supported him in equal measure. A daughter thriving in college, pursuing her dreams while staying connected to family. A son growing up secure in the knowledge that he was loved and wanted. A career that fulfilled him. A home filled with laughter and projects, and the daily evidence of a life well lived. He'd come to that interview looking for stability, for a paycheck, for the ability to survive. Instead, he'd found everything he needed and so much he hadn't known to want. He'd found Victoria. He'd found family. He'd found a second chance at happiness and the courage to take it. And standing in that same hallway years later, his tie perfectly straight and his heart perfectly full, Daniel Cross understood that sometimes the best things in life come disguised as job interviews and crooked neckwear and CEOs who fix both with equal care. Sometimes if you're brave enough to let someone in, they don't just change your life. They help you build a new one. Better, stronger, and filled with more love than you ever thought possible. This was their story. Not perfect, not simple, but completely, beautifully theirs. And as Daniel fell asleep that night beside his wife, with his children safe in their rooms and the future stretching out before them like a promise, he knew with absolute certainty that all of this messy, imperfect, chosen love was exactly what happily ever after looked like. The end.